You guys let me know when you're online. You're online? All right, I'll call this public meeting to order at 6 o'clock on the nose. My name is Jill Burridge. I'm the councillor for Town of Stratford, and I'm also the chair of planning. I'll get to further introductions in a minute. I'm just going to take a moment to acknowledge that the land upon which we gather tonight is unceded territory, the Mi'kmaq, and we pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people of this territory, past, present, and future. And I'm going to take just one other minute here. I just want to take a moment tonight to recognize that we're all coming here tonight with intention. We're all here to ensure we're working together to build a strong community. I encourage all attendees, council, staff here in this room and online to listen with the intent to understand and not listen with the intent to reply. It's a tough thing to do sometimes, especially in these situations. We're all guilty of this, and I think we have a great opportunity tonight to have those discussions and practice that. So I just want to take a moment to try that out. Let's make sure we hear everyone who speaks here tonight. So with that, we are moving on to who we have here. We have with us tonight Mayor Steve Ogden with us tonight. I believe in the room we have Councillor Derek Smith. I saw him earlier, but maybe oh, okay. So the rest of the council went to a room downstairs just to ensure there was lots of room. They're in the building. They just wanted to ensure there was lots of room for the public to come in. So they are in a room watching virtually with the CAO, Robert Hughes. Looks like there was room for them to come in tonight, but we kind of made that decision a few days ago to ensure there was lots of room for the public to come in. Let's see, and then of course we have, to my right, we have the Director of Planning, Kevin Reynolds, and we have our Town Planner, Blaine Yatabi. Wendy McIntyre's at the back, manning the social media, because we have people coming in here tonight online and listening in. Oh, did I say Wendy McIntyre? Wendy Watts. Sorry, Wendy. For those of you in the room, we have bathrooms. If you have to go to the bathroom, you just go out this door, and there's bathrooms down the hall. Also, when we exit tonight, we're going to ask you to exit through this door over here, just for our COVID operational plan. And I think that is it. Kevin, did I miss anything?
No, just that it's three parts.
Yes, we are having a three-part meeting tonight. First up is Leslie Hilton's motion here about the semi-detached home occupations, and we have another one scheduled for 6:30, which we don't want to cut anyone off here tonight, but we do have three things to go through tonight. We have another one at 6:30 and the last one at 8, I believe it is. So with that, I won't take any more of your time. I guess we'll move forward with the first one up tonight. So I'll read it in. An application has been received from Leslie Hilton of 53 Marion Drive for an amendment to the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45 to allow for a home occupation in a semi-detached dwelling. Currently, a home occupation is only allowed in a single dwelling. Section 8.29.1 of the development bylaw will be amended by adding duplex and semi-attached dwelling to allow a home occupation in these housing types. We're going to start off with an overview from our town planner, Blaine Yatabi. We'll then have a presentation by the applicant, Leslie Hilton, and then we'll open the floor to questions and comments.
Okay, I'm going to take the mask off. I think I'm socially distanced enough here, and I've had my first jab, so. Okay, so the format, as Jill said, there's an overview, which I'm doing for this particular application. There will be a presentation by the applicant, and then we'll take questions. So, as Jill said above, there has been an application from Leslie Hilton for an amendment to the Town of Stratford Zoning Bylaw number 45 to allow for home occupation in a semi-detached dwelling. So, okay, this is just the overviews. No need to go over that right now. So the purpose of this section of the presentation is to discuss the proposed amendments to the Town of Stratford Zoning and Development Bylaw number 45. So following this will be a presentation by the applicant herself. So in the red, we're going to add the text duplex or semi-detached dwelling. So it's amended to read, and Jill went over this, but I'll read the section in its entirety. Section 8.29.1 of the zoning bylaw says, any single dwelling, duplex or semi-detached dwelling, emphasis of the area to be amended, to added, or part of an accessory building may be used as a home occupation subject to the condition that the property owner and the town enter in a development agreement stipulating but not limited to the following conditions. I'm not listing the whole section, I don't need to, because in this paragraph, this first paragraph of 8.29.1 is where we're adding duplex or semi-detached dwelling. So the reason for this is it allows a duplex or semi-detached dwelling in any residential zone to be allocated for a home-based business. So currently they're only allowed in a single dwelling. So this is like a blanket statement. Because of this, we found it easier to do it this way. The following home occupations can now be deleted as a permitted use in these following sections. The low-density residential R1 zone in section 11.223 lists multiple unit residential zone 11.425 and planned unit residential development PURD. So these three zones currently list as a bullet as a permitted use home occupation. So by eliminating these and just having the blanket statement, which we mentioned earlier, makes it a lot more streamlined. So this is redundant and therefore not needed. So there are also no changes required for the land use map or the official plan. So that's really it. It's basically what we like to call a text amendment, and it's actually quite simple. So if there's any questions, I will take them. Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you, Blaine. If a question comes to mind later, feel free to bring it forward if something comes into your head later. So with that, let's have a presentation from Leslie Hilton.
Good evening, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Leslie Hilton. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight, actually. I need your help. I have a situation that has been negatively amplified as a result of our current pandemic. I am a very hardworking business person that has operated in and around this community for many years. As you all know, the business world has been rocked by the traumatic change to our societal behavior. And not so very long ago, we were all going out in the evenings, taking strolls, crowding into bars, restaurants, ice cream parlors, and coffee shops, and even going to the malls. However, since COVID, the idea of face-to-face shopping in the masses has become quite unthinkable. If we think about the other side of these equations and take a look at the people who own and operate these businesses, over the past 15 months, we have had a limited face-to-face transactions, including personal services. This has had a grave impact on so many businesses, including mine. My personal experience is that I have had significant loss in revenue while my expenses have been steadily rising. The only reasonable possibility for me to survive as well as recover financially was to move my business into my home. We are living in a progressive community, and we want to encourage enterprise amongst our population. Since the beginning of this pandemic, we have all heard, well, I've heard our very own Prime Minister say so many times that the backbone of this country are small businesses, and yet we seem to be the ones that are suffering the most. As a result of the pandemic, larger firms have been able to tolerate much better the loss in revenues. However, small businesses have not done so well. There is a quiet desperation, and it's incumbent on town leadership to take some forward-looking measures. There are probably already some businesses that have relocated their business into their home. However, our bylaw, as written, is not broad enough to allow me that same opportunity. Consider my business, for example, as 20 years. I've been operating a nail salon. I've relocated that business as I've seen it grow. However, because of the pandemic, I now find myself in a state of contraction, and I can no longer afford the high rents. Now, I'm going to read some parts to my request for decision that I feel are pertinent to share here this evening with the public. Excuse me. Currently, the town of Stratford does not recognize a semi-detached dwelling as a single-family unit. A semi-detached dwelling has a full wall dividing each separate living space. A semi-detached dwelling, it is recognized with its own PID. It has its own place on the property tax roll. There are both separate connection to water, sewer, as well as electricity services. And it is also described as a single unit for insurance purposes. Now, the town of Stratford does have a home-based business, does have a provision for home-based businesses, but that provision is discriminatory in its face. Arguably, bylaws are written for a number of reasons. These include, but are not limited to, the safety of residents, and the peaceful enjoyment of our properties. Furthermore, the owner-occupied property tax rate is based on the assessed value, whether someone owns a detached or a semi-detached. A single-family dwelling, as described for the purpose of a home-based business, refers to a detached dwelling. In this type of structure, one may operate a number of small businesses. The town's concerns is safety of the neighborhood, vis-a-vis dangerous risk as a result of this business. For instance, a safe flow of traffic and no disturbance to other residents as a result of this business. Now, my business is one of personal service, specifically a nail salon. I have operated this business in and around this community for 20 years, and yet, unbelievably, I cannot operate my business, which serves one client at a time, from my home because of the way this bylaw is written. Now, the detached dwelling across the street from me is running a business out of their home. I pay the same tax per square footage, but yet I am forbidden the same privilege. I have difficulty making sense of this. My street, Marion Drive, has a fairly even ratio, semi-detached dwelling to detached dwellings, and yet we in the semi-detached homes cannot do the same in our homes as our neighbor next door can do in theirs. Again, I have difficulty making sense of this. Extenuating circumstances. We continue to live in an environment that is challenging as a result of this pandemic. Businesses are closing all around us because of lack of revenue. However, business rent and utilities are not being charged at a discounted rate. My business does not pose a danger to the community, either through hazardous material or disruption of traffic. This bylaw, as currently written, impedes my ability to operate legally. This makes absolutely no sense to me or my surrounding neighbors. The owner generates a wage that is then spent here paying not only property tax and utilities, but buying groceries, seeking entertainment, and dining opportunities, all within this community. My decision requested. Over the past several weeks, I have canvassed all my neighbors, and none of them even noticed I was running my business out of my home, let alone it being a disruption. My neighbors are totally in support of my in-home business. In fact, now that my neighbors, as well as my clientele base, have been made aware, they are very much in support of the changes that are long overdue. I do believe this bylaw was last revised in 2018. Let me ask you this. During this negotiation, had anyone considered a global pandemic and the effects it might have on our community as well as our economy? No, they did not, because absolutely no one could have foreseen this travesty. Also, in 2018, you could buy a detached dwelling for $300,000. Now it's getting difficult to find a semi-detached for $300,000, and detached dwellings are more like $500,000 and up. As the market changes and the costs go up and up and up, these bylaws should be given consideration for change to give semi-detached homeowners equal privileges under the bylaw in question. Because of affordability, semi-detached homes seem to be the way of the future for the hard-working middle class. I ask you now, please recognize and consider these points. Now, I did take a look at some bylaws within the region. I took a look at Sussex, which is a population of about 4,700 people, and they do allow home occupation businesses in their home occupation bylaws within semi-detached. I also looked at Riverview, which is a bedroom community to Moncton, very much like Stratford's a bedroom community to Charlottetown. And they too allow businesses in semi-detached. Also, finally, I looked at Yarmouth, and Yarmouth is population very similar to Stratford, and they too allow businesses in their home occupation bylaw in semi-detached. I also looked at Charlottetown, which allows businesses in semi-detached. Now, it certainly seems unreasonable to me to think I cannot operate my business, my small business in the town of Stratford out of my semi-detached home, when clearly this seems like the norm. Now, I acted in full compliance with all of your requests. I am now asking the same from you, my neighbors who serve in this government and at the town hall. I would really also like to take a second to acknowledge that I am fully aware of all the work that has been done to date, and I want you all to know that I'm extremely grateful. I thank you very much. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to Kevin Reynolds, who has so graciously helped me maneuver through this process that I knew absolutely nothing about. And I know, Kevin, you probably don't think you helped me very much, but you really did help me a lot. I want to thank you. Anyway, with that, I'll close, and I hope everybody has a great evening.
Thank you, Leslie. Great job. All right, so we're going to open the floor to any comments or questions that you might have had from Blaine's presentation. We'll just ask you to come to the mic. We would like you to give your address, only because proximity plays a big role. Or not in this one. Does it? No, this is a proximity, this is a full town decision, so we don't. Feel free to come to the mic and identify yourself and bring any comments forward that you would like any decision makers to hear at this time.
Hey, I'm Robert Cadet. I'm at 47 Marion Drive. I was home making supper when you texted me. I told you to call me, remind me, but unfortunately I'm just around the corner. So I'm in total support of Leslie here. Look, I make more noise on that street than she could ever begin to make here. You know, I have a motorcycle, I'm out screaming, I'm on my roof. If anybody should be looked at, it should be me. But, you know, look, she's you know, you really need to take a good look at this, because she's just a business person. She's a darling of a lady who's just trying to make a living. And she's, you know, I'm very impressed with her presentation here tonight, because we're all suffering with this pandemic. We are. You know, I'm a rotational worker. I'm in lockdown over there in Nova Scotia. I'm in lockdown over here. I'm testing every 3 times every 2 weeks. You know, it's time that we got a break somewheres. You know, like as much as I like the idea of this bubble thing coming, I don't think we're ready for it, but that's not for me to do. It's for people in government to make these decisions. And when it comes to Leslie, one person at a time, she's not causing any trouble in our neighborhood whatsoever. Like, you know, she's just small little detached little unit there, and the money that she put into and it's my understanding she was given the green light to go with this, and she spent an enormous amount of money to put this in, then to come to find out she wasn't allowed to have it, so she's lost the money on that as well. I mean, it's only fair that she, you know, I cannot see how any problem here whatsoever with the neighborhood as far as her running her business there. My God, if one car in, the only time there's going to be more than two people is when they're passing by each other. So I'm in 100% support of her, and you know, and I think that you know, it's just a business. You know, give her a chance to. You know, I feel for you, Leslie, because I mean, I'm fortunate. I got to work through this whole pandemic while I've seen people lose everything. You know, and it's not, you know, it's. Even where I work, there's been layoffs, and so, you know, we need to consider this. It's not a problem. She's 3 doors up from me. She makes more noise with her motorcycle than she does with her business. So she's a Harley rider. You got to give her a break. Anyways, please, I hope you consider 47 Marion Drive, 3 doors down, and I don't see any problem with this at all. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Sanitize.
Sure, we're doing the COVID.
Hi, my name is Judy. I live at 51 Marion Drive. I'm on the other half of the detachment, the duplex. And I don't have a problem. Like when she did run it briefly, when she thought she had the green light to go ahead, I didn't see anything that even made me turn my head. I mean, I have more traffic in my driveway when my daughters and their partners come to visit or for supper. And it's like she said, she does nails. You can only do one person at a time. It's not going to be a big amount of traffic. It's going to be a car here and there, and we all do that every day in our everyday lives. You have people visit 1 car, 2 cars, and I don't think she would ever make this move if she thought it was harmful to anybody. She's a very caring person and a great neighbor, and I think she should be given this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Tamara Carrier, and I am a healthy home consultant with Eris. Long story short, we offer the most powerful air surface purification ever discovered. In 2017, we were inducted into the Space Foundation Hall of Fame. What that means is our product was taken to the space station, and they decided that humanity would benefit from it, so therefore we've been inducted. Leslie runs 2 units in her home, 2 now, simply because she had 1 running in her former salon. And so she's taking great care, and she's very mindful of her clients, of her neighbor, who, I might add, also runs our technology in the same complex. So with that being said, I fully support her. She is a wonderful, wonderful lady, and much respect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just take a minute. Leslie brought this forward, and she's obviously got a lot of support in the room, and she's done a great presentation tonight. This decision is one that is community-wide. You know, sometimes we're thinking of, 53 Marion Drive, but this is a community-wide decision. So if this is passed tonight, this would be, there'd be semi-detached throughout the community that would, or not pass tonight, but pass when that decision comes to council. But the whole community will, benefit from this process. So I just wanted to highlight that, yeah. If there's any further comments, feel free.
I probably won't need the mic, but anyways, because you can't see me. I've been a client of Leslie's for years, and I was so pleased when she mentioned that she was going to be moving her salon I'm at 7 Rosebank Road in Stratford. So I was so glad that she was moving to Stratford, and I felt terrible when I spoke to her, and she said that she wasn't able to continue because of this particular bylaw. So because we have our own single-family dwelling, we offered if she needed to, that she could open her salon in our home. And Leslie wanted to make sure that she followed every single protocol to the letter, and she made sure that she found someplace that she could go and not affect our family as well, because she's such a considerate, kind-hearted person. So she's definitely researched everything very well, and I don't see any problem at all with her business at all. It's very quiet, it's very peaceful when you go to her home. She's got lovely puppies and essential oils, and yeah, no. And Leslie's a wonderful person. She would definitely 100% not have moved her business here if she thought that it would have detrimentally affected anyone. And I really think, as a whole, as a smaller community on Prince Edward Island, I know we're one of the bigger ones, but still, we need to help support our small businesses as much as we can. PEI has always been about that, and I think the more that we can support our small businesses, it's better for our island. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. My name is Nicole Phillips, and I live at 39 Marion Drive, so I think I just missed your canvas probably of neighbors, but I commend your presentation, and I really, your research was excellent and certainly leads me to help support your bid for running your business out of your home. My concern, though, I do have a couple, and it's not so much about your individual business and even your operation, because of the fact that you are a client, sort of one at a time, client-based business. So I assume you'll have a plan in terms of traffic and having your clients park in your driveway. But my concern is that, back to Councillor Burge's point about this being a blanket-wide change to the bylaw for other applications for people to run their home-based business, where the density perhaps is even more intense. I think of other streets, and Marion Drive isn't that wide a street, so we even notice when you do have a family gathering or have friends over. I know it's not been as common during the pandemic, but you know, when people park on the street, it really does impede the safety. There's a lot of families on Marion Drive, and that's in other areas too. So I guess I just want it to be considered that while this individual application for a change, there might be situations where businesses have a different model where it could really impede traffic flow. I serve on a volunteer committee called Citizens on Patrol. I also sit on the infrastructure committee for the town as a volunteer, and also sit in on the safety services committee meetings. And it's a common topic to talk about speeding in our community and about visibility on streets. Just the other night, I drove on to Pearly Drive, which is a street just a few doors down from your residence and up from mine. And there was a vehicle parked there with a trailer, a pickup truck. I think it was probably a neighbor on Marion Drive who had parked there for a period of time. And if I had met a vehicle coming the other way, we would have not been able to pass, and if there were people walking, it would have been very difficult. So I just ask people to keep that in mind, and I guess I would ask Blaine what the rationale for the fact that this bylaw has only allowed single-family dwellings. Like, why was it reviewed in 2018, and like, why has semi-detached or duplexes not been included in this bylaw? I guess I'd like a little bit of rationale. Was it because of density issues? And again, I really, if anything, I wonder if there could be an exception made on a case-by-case basis to allow people like Leslie, like when her model really does work within a community, to be allowed to operate, as opposed to maybe affecting the bylaw on a blanket to wide basis. So just a couple questions to think about.
Good
Thank you.
points, Nicole, and I'll have Kevin likely speak to the points you brought up.
I'll try and speak to that because Blaine wouldn't have been here when the original consultation sessions were done. Blaine was here when the bylaw was formally approved. There was significant discussion there was this portion from the former planner that was called Where We Work. And there was significant discussion around home-based businesses and where they should be allowed. The discussions at that time focused to ensure that they were more broadly allowed throughout the community, but at that time it was focused on detached homes. One of the issues I do recall discussing was around parking. One thing I will reiterate that even if it is proposed, if this bylaw amendment does go through, one of the restrictions that still stays in place is you have to have the adequate off-street parking for the business. So if you do not have that, we recently had somebody apply for a bed and breakfast, and they wanted to offer 3 rooms for rent, which you're allowed to in the bylaw. They only had off-street parking for 2 of those additional rooms. There's 2 required for the dwelling unit first, 2 parking spaces required for the dwelling unit first. So then anything above and beyond that for parking has to be separate from that. That may have been, I believe that was probably some of the discussion, and I believe there was some concern from council at that time of, they like to take steps and not necessarily move the bylaws too quickly in case they do cause issues. They like to kind of test the waters on things. We're doing that right now with our secondary suites. We've allowed secondary suites within any dwelling within the town of Stratford, if they're owner occupied and whatnot, but we were requested to allow them in accessory units, and we do not allow them in accessory units at this point in time. When the bylaw is reviewed again, we'll see if that's something that council may do. So when bylaw reviews are done, I think Leslie brought that up as a point, they're done at that point in time. And it was a stepping stone at that point in time, and we're looking at a request now to move them to semis. Based on the research that Blaine has done and some of the information that Leslie has brought to our attention, we seem comfortable at the semi-detached level because there is a side yard on each side. It does allow, typically with a side yard, it does allow you to have additional parking without any major issue. When you get into townhouses and you get into interior units and you get into apartments, I think that's something that would require further research before we were to consider something like that. So, and I think you're correct in saying, do specific types of businesses fit within this model, and some may not. There's a list of types of businesses that are currently allowed as home occupations. Anytime we've ever had a home occupation requested that didn't fall within that list, we bring it forward to planning board and council for their actual decision on it. So we don't make the decision at staff level. Not everything fits through the box. So when we have ones that don't clearly fit through the box, we bring them forward for planning board and council for their consideration. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you. All right, I'm just seeing the time is 6:30. If there was anyone that wanted to make a closing remark, I'm more than welcome to hear you. But otherwise, I think I'll probably, okay, go for it, yeah.
I'm not even near her, but she does my nails beautifully. And I fully support what she's doing. And you know what? I actually commend her for taking the stance, because I think it's time now that the bylaws get updated and bring in semi-detached. Obviously, do your due diligence, provide guidelines, recommendations, requirements for each business that are going in. But if they're meeting the guidelines and whatnot, then she should be able to run her business. She's successful at it, and she's very compliant, and she respects her people and her neighborhood. So, something like this should definitely be brought to the table. So I'm glad that you did, so that there's other people that can do this as well. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so what I'll do is I'll talk about next steps. So what'll happen here is all this will be read in. into minutes, and what we're going to have is a planning board meeting, and it'll be presented to the planning board, and look for discussion and a recommendation to council from them, and that'll happen on July 5th. The town council meeting for a decision would be July 14th, and that would be the first reading of this new amended bylaw. And then what we would do is we'd have a special town council meeting for decision the day after, where we would do the second reading of the bylaw and adoption, and then we're good. So, so that's the next steps. Yeah, with that, I think.
Final comments
Final comments.
can be received until.
Oh, yes. Final comments. So yes, so people are listening in online. You can, anyone listening online, that's going to be kept up, or if you guys want to revisit anything that was said here tonight, that's going to be online in the town's YouTube account and Facebook account, so you can go in and see that. And comments will be received until June 30th, 2021 at noon. If you have any further thoughts, or there's something that you wish you said tonight and you didn't have an opportunity, flip them in an email to Kevin or to the town, and we'll take those until June 30th at noon. So thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
And exit through.
And exit. We'll have you exit over here. All right, I'll call this meeting to order. I believe everyone's checked in. All right. We did a land acknowledgement in the first meeting, so I won't do that again. And I also just want to welcome everyone here. I'm Jill Burridge. I'm a counselor in Stratford. I'm also the chair of planning. Planning Development and Heritage, and I'll get into some further introductions in a moment. I'm starting this new thing that I learned, and I think it's good. It's kind of a perfect opportunity to do it, but just taking a moment tonight to, before we start, to recognize that we're all coming here tonight with intention to ensure we're working together to build a strong community. I encourage all attendees, council, staff, everyone in this room and online, to listen with intent to understand and not listen with the intent to reply. We're all guilty of this. Myself, I know I'm working on it. And I think the opportunity in a room like this tonight is the perfect opportunity to practice that. And so I just wanted to take a moment to kind of put that in front of our minds. With that, I'm going to move to introductions. Tonight we have Mayor Steve Ogden here, and he has his book out with his notes, so that's good. We have the rest of council. They're in the building in a room. We just want to make sure we could fit as many of the public in here, so they're here. They're just watching online in a boardroom. And also our CAO, Robert Hughes, is with them down there, so they're nearby. We have Director of Planning, Kevin Reynolds, nearby. We have our Town Planner, Blaine Yatabi. Wendy Watts is at the back, manning the social media accounts and sending anything that comes through them here to me. So we're sure to get everyone's notes in. Anyone that's here and has to use the washroom, you'll just go through that door, and there's washrooms just down the hallway to your left. And also, whenever we exit tonight, do the operational plan, it'll be the same as last time. We'll exit through this door. I think that's it. Kevin, did I miss anything?
Just that we're viewing online as well.
Yes, and we are viewing online tonight. And that recording of tonight, if you want to revisit anything that's said, will be available to you for 7 days. And comments will be able to be submitted until June 30th noon. And that will be how that will roll. And this is, the second, we're doing 3 items tonight, this public meeting, and so this is the second one. So we have scheduled till 8. We're not going to shut anyone down, but we are scheduled to 8. So with that said, I'll stop and move this thing along. What I'll do, I guess, is I'll just hand it to the Director of Planning to walk through the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everyone. This is an application has been received from Landfest Company Limited to rezone parcel numbers 106-1175, 106-1167, and 329-011, approximately 14.01 acres in total, from the low-density residential zone R1 to the planned unit residential zone PURD for the purpose of being able to develop a residential subdivision. Also, in consideration of a development scheme. So I think everyone in the room is aware that there was an application made on this property last year. This is a revised development scheme, so there's been changes made to the actual proposal, and I will let the applicant go through what those changes are. So just to briefly outline what's currently allowed in the current R1 low-density residential zone, the current permitted uses are single dwellings, secondary dwelling units, home occupations, active and passive recreation, accessory buildings, private garages, general agricultural uses. As conditional uses within the current low-density residential zone, you can have duplex or semi-detached dwellings up to 20% of the units in a block. And as a special permitted use, which would require a public meeting, you can have duplex or semi-detached dwellings up to 40% of the units in a block, neighborhood child care facilities, child care centers, convenience stores, and health clinics. Also group homes, community care facilities, and daycare homes as special permitted use. So then the proposal is to rezone to the Planned Unit Residential Development Zone, or PURD zone. And the current permitted uses within the PURD zone are single dwellings, duplex and semi-detached dwellings, townhouse dwellings up to 6 units, owned either individually or as condominiums, home occupations, home-based childcare facilities, neighborhood childcare facilities, active and passive recreation, parks and playgrounds, accessory buildings, private garages, public and/or private assisted care facilities, and as special permitted uses, which again would require a public meeting, group child care center, community care facilities, public and/or private assisted care facilities, child care facilities, health clinics, multiple attached dwellings or apartments, and first floor commercial. I think that outlines all of the information from me.
All right, so I'll ask the applicant. Presenting on the applicant is Andrew McCormick here tonight, so I'll ask Andrew to come up to the podium and take us through your presentation.
Is John?
Yeah, I think maybe we'll add that John Harelt is joining in on the video feed and will be available if there's questions for him as well. So he's listening in and will be available if there's questions.
Thank you very much. He took the opportunity to see his new grandchild, so I've been thrusted into the spotlight.
He's in isolation, isn't he?
Yes. So this is, I guess, our third time coming back to a public meeting, and what we've done is, for some of you who this may be your kind of first visit to the public meeting, the property is about, as Kevin said, 14.5 acres. It's located on the intersection of Stratford and Kepwick Road, and you can see kind of the many amenities that showing there below. It's kind of in the center of a developed area of Stratford. One thing that has been my job for the past few months at least, and each time we go through this process, is going through the amount of feedback that we get from residents. That could be written, verbal, anything like that. But what we did this time is we kind of went through pretty line by line and basically broke it down into some categories of, what the concerns were, and also, what some feedback, positive and negative, was about the project. And this just kind of quickly shows some of the feedback. We color coordinated.
Good.
Yeah, you can click it. And that allowed us to break it down into some categories for this proposal. It's kind of quick, but not expecting you to read
That's
it all.
good. It's
as
a
we
lot
go.
of feedback. That's good.
But it shows that it's good, because we got a lot of feedback on the last one. And what we found was that the major points of concern that we got from the last proposal by and far were traffic. That was broken down into an increase in traffic just generally. Also, there was a number of people that expressed some concerns about emergency vehicle access, because if you remember from the previous plan, a lot of it was coming on to Redden Heights. And then another one was just the general fit of what we were offering. Obviously, it's zoned R1, which is just single-family homes, but we were looking to add a few different options there as well. So single-family lot sizes, and then the housing diversity was another one. The addressable concerns were some smaller itemized ones. Construction disruption, which in any building environment is always going to be a concern. Green space, which is very important, especially in Stratford. And then also stormwater management which would be more like the ponds, and just in general how we were going to deal with the rising rain and storm that was going to come. So based off all these, all the feedback that we got from residents, I feel, obviously biased, that we've addressed a lot of the concerns, not all of them, but hopefully a large amount of them in our new plan. One thing also, another thing I found interesting is that I also plotted kind of where the feedback was coming from, and it is sporadic, obviously, but you do see a pretty high density coming from the John Hamilton and Redden Heights area. And when you break the concerns down, a lot of it stemmed from traffic, because a lot of a large part of the development was coming onto that road. So, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I know that's wrong because I signed that petition. And I'm agreeing. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry. The dots are, yeah, they may be, I hope they're supposed to be accurate. I went through, but I apologize if I made a mistake. But
I disagree too.
Oh.
I'm just saying it might be more representative because it's, sorry.
No, it's all good. And like I said, the main point for this one was more to show that a lot of the concerns, especially with reference to traffic, were coming from those two kind of road areas. So I apologize if it's not represented correctly. Yeah, so then that leads us to our new plan, which we have developed based off the feedback that we got from residents in the past few meetings. So the major points that I'd like to point out with the new plan is we have preserved the green space area, which a lot of community groups have already reached out to us, looking to add some paths, walkways, stuff that the community as a whole could use. Also, we have, again, based off the feedback, a reduction in traffic onto John Hamilton. There is 11 Redden Heights, sorry. There's about 11 single-family home dwellings that are now feeding onto that location. Next is, it may be hard to tell from the plan, but there is 2 emergency exits now. I might have to just step away. The narrow area right here serves as that emergency exit, and also it allows the residents to use it as a walking trail when it's not being used by emergency vehicles. And obviously onto Stratford Road is another access point. Another one was the layout was shifted a little bit, and instead of a more linear approach along Millennium, it's a more rounded cul-de-sac option, which allows for a little bit larger backyard areas along that area. And then the stormwater was one that surprised me, at least, because we had some larger ponds, which are beautiful, obviously, but some residents brought up a concern of upkeep. And to be honest, the swale itself was designed to handle more than enough water for this subdivision. And so all that was suggested, and I'll bring it up in another slide, but we did have a report done by an engineer to address that was the case. And the only item he brought up was that to control the speed of the water, possibly to extend a certain part of the swale, but no particular ponds were necessary. And then the last part was, again, what I mean by tiered diverse housing option is matching what is existing. So again, single family homes generally butting up against single family homes. And then as you move inward towards the commercial area, which is the church, then that is where the townhouses start to accumulate. Again, as I kind of discussed, we did have the traffic study updated because we know that's very important to the surrounding residents. I couldn't put the whole report, obviously, in the slide, but the 2 points that they brought up, first of all, they have to give in the report a recommendation, and it was recommended that this subdivision does not pose any kind of dangerous increase in traffic. But when I'm reading through, the big one that I found interesting was, although a lot more of the traffic is funneling onto Stratford Road now, that road is still, even with the addition of the units from our subdivision, still remains at under 20% capacity of what it's designed to take. So that doesn't make anyone that lives on the Stratford Road feel any better, I understand, but it's just to show that kind of that road is meant to handle quite a bit of traffic. And then from a Redden Heights standpoint, obviously it's been reduced significantly, but just to put a stat to it, it is about, at peak morning and evening times, it's about 1 car every 6 minutes. So I'm not gonna stand here for 6 minutes and put you through that. But it kind of shows the addition of 11 single-family homes. I think I touched enough on the stormwater, but I just wanted to show that we did get an engineer. And before anything goes through the planning phase, it has to be done by an engineer as well, so that'll be handled. One thing I found in our last presentations personally, that some of the pictures were, even though it's just to show you kind of what we're thinking for the design of the homes, we don't really get into it in this presentation. They might have been a bit too big city or kind of Halifax or Toronto. So I kind of wanted to show a description of what we were thinking based off of a design that we've already done. So I think I jumped. So I'll just hold on for a second. So we did, I don't know if everyone's familiar with Williams Gate subdivision. So it's just off the Mason Road, and it's kind of a perfect example of a tiered density as well. So just kind of shows, if you're not familiar with the area. Hopefully it'll play. Oh,
Good.
yep. So the Mason Road is shown, and then semi-detached, and then moving into townhouse options as well. And then, so what that really is to show that, to show a past project that we've already done, so that hopefully you like it, but it instills some confidence in that we're not just looking to put anything up there. And this shows kind of, again, the Mason Road and then the Williams Gate subdivision as well. One that I found kind of funny, but it, I guess, was a compliment. One resident was, she mentioned, or that individual mentioned, that she was concerned about the pictures that we had proposed and felt more comfortable with something like Escher Street. And some people might not be familiar with Escher Street. It's kind of behind the old Skierman's building. And so this is, again, my boss, I wasn't a part of the company, but big fan of color at this time. So, but this is Escher Street just behind Skierman's. It's kind of a single family option that was a little closer together for the Charlottetown area. And that's what she was referring to. And funny enough, we were the ones who built that. So again, just showing a bit of the quality of past projects that we've done. This is a little bit more for council, but also for Stratford as a whole. But as you well are aware, I don't have to go through this. Stratford is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. And there is a need for affordable housing in the community. Obviously, if you own your own home, it tends not to be a big deal, but use myself as an example. I live in Sherwood right now, and at the time I work in Stratford, and I was looking for a house for myself, but I looked for a year and a half and couldn't find anything that was in my price range. And my wife and I are both fully employed. But it just shows that, average home prices, for instance, now this was in April, but they did top 500,000. So I feel like there is a lot of single family homes in the community, and having neighborhoods with a mix of options, not all townhouses, but a mix of options is I feel what Stratford needs going forward. And then again, a little bit more for council, but there is a property tax generation, and Stratford has some major projects. We're standing in one that they've completed, and some big aspirations moving forward. And if you don't know, the major way that towns pay for stuff like this is through property tax. So an addition of these, worked through this number with the finance department of PEI, and that is a rough or a pretty good estimate of what the town itself, as a municipality, I've taken out the provincial side, can expect from a development like this. So, yeah, so that is the presentation, unless John wants to add something.
Did anything come through from John online, or? No?
If there's simple questions that we want to ask them, we can read them in to save switching back and forth.
Kevin was just saying, because of COVID, every time someone gets up to speak, we have to sanitize or whatever. So if you're more comfortable to just, say the question from your seat, we'll just repeat it into the microphone so those online can hear it. If that's, you can come to the mic or you can do it that way, whatever you're comfortable with. We'll do it either way. But yeah, we are at a point here now where we're going to open the floor for questions, comments, concerns for anyone in the room that would like to, or online. They can come in through online, and Wendy will forward them to me here, and I'll make sure to get them in. Maybe what I'll do quickly is we did have, while everyone's thinking, I have one that a resident asked to read in tonight. He is, there's two addresses here who are certainly in proximity to this development and wanted to read in tonight. Maybe I'll start with that and then we'll open the floor. Let's see, where do I? The undersigned, Pam and David Ing of 158 Stratford Road, and Charlene Drank and Strake, and Steve Lidstone of 156 Stratford Road wish to voice our objection to the proposed rezoning and would like this letter read at the public meeting on June 23rd, 2021. The property at 154 is a rental property, so you likely won't hear from them. When we, the Ings, first bought our house in Stratford 43 years ago, we chose Stratford because of the size of the lots, with space so neighbors weren't packed in so close together. It was a bedroom community with peace and tranquility. We have watched in dismay over the years as development has eliminated treat areas to cram in apartment buildings and townhouses. The road to the town hall is crammed with apartments, and the Ducks Landing area is a mass of humanity. Is this what town council really wants our town to look like? We downsized to 158 Stratford Road. We and our neighbors at 156 Stratford Road checked the zoning of the beautiful field across the street from us to make sure it was R1 before buying our property. When Landfest purchased these fields, they knew it was zoned R1, but that what they are proposing is an abomination. Putting 87 units on the parcel of land will bring 300 or more people onto that small space, along with loss of enjoyment for the neighbors around it, as well as increased crime. Why do we have to keep going through this process year after year? The land is R1. Stop trying to change the rules in the middle of the game. We have enough areas of the town where people are packed in. Please leave this land R1 as it was intended. When the zoning was originally done, the council of the day knew it was the right decision, and hopefully this council will see the wisdom of keeping it R1. We have been in our houses for 16 years and fully expect to see single-family dwellings being built across the street from us, which would be in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. This proposed plan would completely change the neighborhood. We would ask councilors to come and stand in our front lawns and visualize what these 83 units will look like. In fact, we beg you to come and look. It should be mandatory for council to have a site tour of the land before approving any zoning change. If council votes to approve this project, and we sincerely hope you don't, we would request that the townhouses next to Stratford Road be situated facing the road so the parking lots would be behind them and we don't have a road and a parking lot as our view. Also, we would like compensation from the town or developer in the form of a hedge across the front of our properties, along with cleaning the front of our houses and our windows during construction phase. Respectfully submitted by Pam and David Ing, 158, Charlene Drank and Steve Lidstone, 156 Stratford Road. And I read that in because he is in very close proximity to this, and he couldn't be here tonight because high school graduation, and so we said we would read that in. With that, I'll open the floor.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to say thank you to the mayor and the council and the planning department for allowing us to have the time to speak about our concerns about this latest rezoning application. My name is Janet Compton. I have lived at 25 Millennium Drive since 2007. I must say I'm having a bit of deja vu, as I think this has been less than a year since we have discussed this rezoning application.
Please pardon my speech, as most of it is repetitive and it's reiterating what I spoke about last year on the rezoning proposal on July 15th, 2020. This rezoning process has been going on for many, many years that I have been a part of. Sustainable subdivision with 65 units. Last year in 2020, it was a PERD development with 75 units, and you, our council, voted against it, and I appreciate it, and we thank you so much for that. Now in 21, it's a PERD with 84 units. As someone told one of the residents, some tweaking could be done, of course, which happens with most engineering developments. So basically, no accountability to the concept plan that has been drawn up. This is one of the reasons that the town should proceed with caution to consider any rezoning application in our town at all. I almost feel like this developer is trying to wear us down. The surrounding residents who live in the R1 zones wear us down by this never-ending barrage of rezoning applications. They are proposing a high-density rezoned application to be put on land surrounding by low-density housing. This developer continues to try to put a square peg in a round hole. It certainly just doesn't fit, or it doesn't reflect or enhance our surrounding neighborhood. I understand that Stratford is supposedly saturated with R1 houses for sale that are too expensive for people to buy. Maybe we need to scale down our R1 homes. One level instead of two. Cheaper to build for developers, more cost-effective for potential residents to buy, and would appeal to many types of people looking to buy their first house, or scale down from a larger house now that the kids have left the nest but aren't quite willing or wanting to live in townhouses, or be butted up against their next-door neighbor. The traffic and safety of the residents who may live in this proposed rezoning to PERD is of the utmost importance, thus with the majority accessing to and from Stratford Road. This road is already busy, a busy throughway to access much of the needed amenities we access daily. There's also additional infrastructure going in down the road by Greenway, which is just down the road from this proposed rezoning. This will also add more traffic onto the Stratford Road. We also need to consider our long winters with snow removal equipment and snowbanks taking up our roadways, a safety issue for current residents for walking our current neighborhood streets. What will it possibly be like in this PERD development with this high density of residents and traffic? School buses, emergency vehicles. I can't imagine it'll be very safe. The developer proposes an additional emergency fire access lane through to the other side of the development. Who is going to monitor the access lane on a daily basis? Perhaps the gate or whatever is going to be there will be left open and traffic can just flow through. This is inviting the town to have to deal with complaints from residents within the proposed rezoning. Does the town really want to deal with more complaints and try to reinforce the bylaws? This developer bought this property many years ago knowing it was R1 and has been attempting to rezone it ever since to maximize their profit potential. This latest rezoning application will also include the building of a roadway across the existing trail. Really, a road that we're going to have to cross in order to enjoy the trail? Is Stratford willing to change all of its available R1 zones to PERD? This is what can happen. How will our town look like in the years to come? The mayor, council, and members of the planning department, again, if this rezoning application was in your neighborhood, you would be where we are today, trying to save the integrity of your space. I can guarantee it, and I personally hope you don't have to go through this. I can only speak for myself when I say this continuing rezoning application attempts by this developer is affecting my sense of security, my peace of mind, and enjoyment of many things my immediate community and the town of Stratford has to offer. I am so very tired of this issue. This land once developed is something Stratford will never get back, and I ask you to treat it with the respect it deserves. Support and listen to the current residents who have invested in the town over the years. Think about the safety issues this rezoning can or may bring and how it's going to affect your current residents and potential residents to come to your town. PERD will leave this piece of land not red in meadows, but red in madness. Please say no to this PERD rezoning proposal and retain its R1 zoning for the peace and safety of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
My name's Danny Wood, and I'm Janet's next-door neighbor on Millennium. And I'm not going to reiterate things I said in the previous years, other than I thought we fought this battle. I thought we won it. Apparently, the message wasn't received. There is a couple of things that I want to bring up that I didn't talk about before, and I did some research on the internet. What's the difference between an urban environment and a suburban environment? And according to the internet, suburbs are large residential areas that surround cities, while urban areas refer to core areas of cities. Urban areas tend to be densely populated and a lot more crowded than suburbs. Suburbs are lower density areas that separate residential and commercial areas. That's why I moved to Stratford 6 years ago. I lived in an urban environment and wasn't happy. I moved to Stratford to live in a suburban environment. And I think R1 to PERD, please, don't do it. Once it's PERD, we already found out last year, once you allow PERD, it's there. We can't fix it. Having said that, I want to draw council's attention to a couple of sections of the bylaw. 4.188, no development permit shall be issued if, in the opinion of council, the proposed development would be detrimental to the convenience, health, or safety of residents in the vicinity or the general public. I draw council's attention to 5.7 because this was a concern of mine last year. No person shall change the grade of a property so as to cause increased water runoff into an adjoining property without the written permission of the affected property owner. A lot of our properties on Millennium Drive are below the grade of that field. Having said that, I'm not going to waste your time. Please keep it R1.
Thank you, Danny. Andrew, was there anything you wanted to speak to there? I noticed you tried to get up there at one point.
Yeah, I don't want to have... I'll just pick 2 points, just with the first one. The emergency exit, just because on the plan you can't really see what it would be like. It's more of a gravel road. It would almost look more like a walking trail to anyone seeing it. So no car would... in the way we, and I'm sure there'd be some sort of barrier, but really when you're driving by, it would look more like a pedestrian would be using it, not an emergency vehicle. And for that reason, it's just meant for that, the odd time, you know, one in the odd chance that they can't access it from another point. So it wouldn't be like a paved road or anything like that. And it would be upkept by us, to answer your question on that. The only other point I just wanted to mention was with reference to PERD, some people, you know, I sometimes even get a little confused when I started looking into it. We are bound, it's kind of a linked process, and Kevin, maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit, but it's not just rezoning to PERD and then we're able to do kind of whatever we want. We are locked to the development scheme shown here. And then if there was someone else that wanted to come in and it changed hands or something like that, they would have to go through this whole process again and have their plan approved. So it doesn't kind of open the window for anything to happen, just so I just wanted to let people know that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Am I able to speak there now, Jill?
Oh. Is that John? Okay, I'll go to John and then I'll finish up with Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I just want to answer to a couple of the concerns about adjoining property and water. You cannot flow water into somebody else's property, which Danny is correct, and you have to have an engineered water plan, so that does not happen. And this particular property, the grades are easy to control, and so that would not be an issue. Safety and traffic was brought up again, which we tried to address in our presentation, and I think we have. Instead of taking all those vehicles and having the possibility of them being able to exit onto Redden, they cannot do that anymore with, it's just 11 homes. And as Andrew pointed out in the presentation, Stratford Road, even with our addition, will only be at 20% capacity. This is a commuter road with a, it's a highway with the yellow line dying in the middle of it. And our project, is according to engineering reports, is having a minuscule effect on traffic. Those are the only points I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Kevin, to go back to Andrew's point there.
Yeah, maybe to elaborate on what Andrew was referring to there. So what they're proposing here is called a development scheme. So I'll just read the section of the bylaw that allows this proposal to be considered. So notwithstanding subsections 1, 2, and 3 above, which outline what the lot requirements are within the PURD zone, Council may approve innovative housing forms with less than minimum lot requirements, providing that, in the opinion of Council, all other sections of this bylaw are complied with, and that the application involves the development of at least 20 dwelling units and at least 1 block of land, subject to the following. 1, Council shall require the applicant to submit a detailed development scheme for review, which is what they have currently done. Council shall hold a public meeting to inform residents and property owners of the details of such a development scheme and to receive their comments, which is what we're doing tonight. All subdivision and/or developments shall be subject to a subdivision agreement and/or development agreement that may include but not be limited to the following. 1, subdivision requirements pursuant to Section 4 of the bylaw. 2, building types within the development. 3, a schedule of styles and design with emphasis placed on placement of buildings relative to surrounding uses and streets. And 4, a schedule of subdivision and/or development phases. Then 5, or subsection 4, sorry, all developments shall be approved only in accordance with an approved development scheme and the provisions of any subdivision agreements and/or development agreements. And subsection 5, Council may require the establishment of an incorporated homeowner association to own and maintain any land or facilities held in common. So the difference between the proposal that's being considered here tonight with this development scheme attached to it is if by chance the rezoning was successful and the applicant chose to do something different on the property than what is presented in this development scheme you're seeing here tonight, then they have to go back through the process of a public meeting to change the development scheme. There is no such thing as a contract rezoning. We can't, the town can't rezone the property and lock the developer into a specific proposal, and some of the other developments we're going to talk about here this evening. There is no way to link them to this. This development scheme does create a link. It creates a legal document that the developer has to develop it in accordance with the approved development scheme, or they have to go back through the process and try and get something else approved for the property. So I think maybe hopefully that helps explain what Andrew was referring to in that, the developer can't just get rezoning and then do whatever they want within the PURD zone. If they're going to do anything less than minimum lot requirements, I guess an example, they could do something different. They could get rezoning approval for the property, and then they could submit a subdivision plan to the town that meets all the lot requirements within the PURD zone, such as single dwelling lot size, semi-dwelling lot size, townhouse dwelling lot size. You know, they could potentially do something like that. They would not get the number of units on the property that they're getting here, because what's being proposed here has smaller lot sizes than are currently allowed within the bylaw, and that's why they have to go through this process of presenting it at a public meeting. So hopefully that clarifies, but I'll take any questions if anybody has more questions on that particular point.
But Kevin, is it not true that once they achieve PURD, there is a higher density for that piece of land? If it's left as R1, you have single family residential properties, correct?
So for the viewers online, I'll try and reiterate what was request or what was asked there. So if the property is zoned PURD, does that allow for higher density development than is currently allowed within the R1 zone? Yes, it does, no question. But the proposal that is being considered here tonight is the development scheme that is in front of us. So if there is something that is proposed to happen that's different than what is proposed tonight, then the applicant has to go back through this process, back through this public process to have that considered.
Any other comments, folks?
See everybody turn out for this, and yes, I feel like we've done this more than a few times already. I'm one of the Redden Heights residents, have been since 1988. And initially, I was kind of trying to be open to this idea when it was only 57 units, and thought there could be some added value in the process that was going to be put in. Maybe there are R30 homes, maybe there's something in terms of energy efficiency or something. But in every proposal, all I see is volume increases. Let's increase the number of homes. Let's put more into one place. Let's not talk about quality. Let's just go into volume. We'll talk about quality, but we're really into volume. So it's gone from 57, I think 80 some, then 103, all which went through the planning board without apparently blinking an eye, and now 83. So I have concerns with that. I have concern with the fact that it seems to be the default that the community has to oppose everything, and it's almost a given when we start that we are the ones who have to do all the work to make it fit, when zoning was only done in 2018. Well, not zoning, but zoning was affirmed that was R1 in 2018. A year later, we're looking at changing that. So that's not really a way to plan something. There may be a kind of, I think there was something written in terms of the town hall, in terms of a master plan that tends to contradict the zoning that was approved in 2018. But the laws and the way it looks like the zoning is still R1 for our unit. And I'm still curious as to why that's not defended versus why every option seems to be, well, we don't need to pay attention to that. In terms of the unit here, I'm going to correct a few things. The feedback analysis of only 11% being concerned with the character of the community is misleading. In the first meeting we had, it was very clear that traffic concerns and access roads were very important, and we left that meeting thinking they were going to be addressed. The second proposal came in, avoided the access road altogether, and said, well, we did a study and traffic's not a problem. So when people started complaining at high level about the lack of access road, it was because they weren't being listened to in the first proposal or the second proposal. So it got skewed to look like there's more people just complaining about traffic when it's really the way the community is being designed. And a few other things that were misleading too as well. The graphic in terms of mentioning Escher Street was actually mine. While I'm comfortable with my feminine side, I do not identify as she. But if you look at the units here, they remind me when I was visiting my son when he was at university at a province. And the point I made then to show Escher Street was that when you look at the unit off Redden Heights and the one behind it.
Sorry, we just can't hear you online.
Sorry. Okay, sorry, it's hard to point from here.
Yeah.
But if you look at Redden Heights, and if you look at the development of single homes past that, that's pretty much the same as what my son was living in, which is basically a mobile home park, where you have the butt end of a house facing the street. Now, mobile home parks have their place. My son lived in one. I know lots of people who have. I don't know if you want to live in one at $250 or $300 a pop. And I don't see how people would think, when you look at Iraq, and this could possibly go there, because I could certainly see that happening, that you could say that that fits with any community in Stratford. And the problem he had there, as everybody does that lives in that kind of setup, is that your neighbors, you face them, your house faces them in the morning when you get up, and your backyard, your neighbors face you. So the one thing, mentioning again about what a suburban environment is you have enough room that you do have some sense of privacy, which you don't have in this kind of setup. So what I offered then was an alternative, was the homes you develop, which makes more sense, not necessarily in the tiny lots that Charlottetown has done. And I'm certainly not using Charlottetown as an example, because I've seen them knock down a single home and have a 4-story apartment building put up in its place. We're really concerned about the community and what it looks like, and the reasons we joined here in the first place and decided to come to Stratford versus Charlottetown or any of the other communities that are locally nearby. But I was just concerned that the listening doesn't seem to be happening. Like, when there was 57 units, people were concerned about the density then. And then at one point, it got up to 103. If we're not happy with 57, do you think we're happier with almost double that or 3 times the allowed units? I don't think so. So I originally came into this kind of open, saying, well, let's listen to what they've got to say. Maybe there's some options with added quality or added value to the homes, but I haven't seen any of that. I just see volume. And I hope at this point, I'm not open to what was originally proposed at all, where I was before, at least open to looking at it. I think we got to stick with R1, because I don't trust the process, and I don't trust the fact that the community is being listened to. Thank you.
Before you, excuse me, sir, I'll just, for the record, just to state your name and address, or just Eric Chandler and Barry Chandler and address. 6 Redden Heights. Just sorry for the record. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Glenn Fullerton. I'm not a resident of Stratford. My wife came from 60 Stratford Road, and we have a lot of family here in Stratford. And I was the first person to be married in the Blue Church back in, I forget what year it was, but it's late 80s. In 2010, I was elected mayor of the town of Cornwall. I had never chaired a meeting in my life, and never even went to a council meeting. And one of the first meetings, there was a seasoned, well-seasoned councillor there, and she was talking about NIMBYs. And I thought, what are they? Like, who are they? Where do they come from? And I thought, what a prejudiced woman this is. But a NIMBY stands for not in my backyard. And every one of us live in a piece of land that was once somebody's backyard. There's no getting away from it. And as my time as mayor out there, John Harrell and Mervyn McDonald came to see me one time. We went down to an old property that was in bad shape. John owned it, and we talked about different things, and there was higher density. Municipalities are looking for higher density. We can't afford single-family lots the cost of infrastructure, the cost of building materials and stuff. So our densities have to become higher, and it's kind of the way of the future. My daughter's looking for a home. She sent me a link last night to 112 Heron Drive, semi-detached, $369,000 asking price. It'll probably go over that. So, folks, we have to understand it's a different time than when some residents moved here in '88 or 2007. Times are different. John Harrell built some apartment buildings and townhouses in Cornwall, first class, did a stand-up job, willing to work with us. I can't thank him enough for what he did for us, and I think you kind of have to take some of that stuff into consideration. We don't want to be NIMBYs. In British Columbia, they call us bananas. I forget what the actual thing for bananas is, but yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's yeah. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything, but we can't do that today. The price of land and the price of development, we have to have higher increased density, and it's what the municipalities have been pushing for it, and you have to accept it. We don't like change, but it's one of the things it's gonna happen. The only way out of this predicament is anybody that doesn't want it have to form together and make Mr. Harrell an offer for his property. It's the only way to. No, you're right, but I'm just.
You're taking a lot of time here.
Yeah, well.
And the fact is that not in my
all right.
community.
Yeah.
Just maybe what I'll do is if maybe we'll just take our turns. If
Okay.
someone in the audience wants to come up and speak after,
Thank
then
you for
that's
your
fine.
time.
Thank you. Oh, yes, sanitize, sorry.
Hello over there. I'm Alana Redden. I'm at 8 Liam Drive. I just wanted to do in the name of understanding, ask a couple questions. So could you pull back the slide on the property tax increase for the town?
Here it is.
There it is. Great. I was just curious if there was any analysis done on what kind of revenue would come in for an R1 zone.
That would be Andrew, that would be pointed to you, I guess.
Yeah, I can give you, I can't do it in my head, but I could do it fairly easily. Basically, the process that is taken is you would take, it's based off the cost of the new housing. Mm-hmm. So, and that would be based, and then the cost, it's about 80% is what they times it. That number kind of fluctuate based off of different environments, but right now it's about 80%. And then you would divide that by 100, and then that shows you kind of the percentage of property tax that everyone would get, but the town only gets about 42 cents off the top of my head, or 43 cents. So I would just have to, it's kind of based off of an estimate on what the cost of the R1 and how many we could get in the area. And then you would kind of work backwards from there. So
Maybe what we'll do is we'll figure that out.
Yeah,
and get back to everyone.
No, I'd be happy to get your information.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I have an invested interest in the property where I've got little guys who like to hooligan around in the back, but I'm thinking about future where the town's been talking about building up some more schooling and infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I do understand where town's looking to get more revenue for things like that. So I was just curious what the R1 would offer us. So information on that would be great. And then just out of curiosity, when was the traffic analysis done?
So we had...
Andrew, I'll get you to come to the mic. Yeah.
So we had an initial traffic analysis done for the last plan, where a gentleman had come and gone through the whole process. They came back and basically updated that plan based off of the changes that we had made, because we had a lot more traffic coming on to Redden Heights, and now it's kind of changed, but the surrounding environment is the same. So they came back, they updated all the information. So to answer your question, it was probably about, I think I submitted that report to you, Kevin, two weeks ago? Two weeks ago. So it's very we updated to make sure there was no issues with the new design.
Okay. So just for clarity, the traffic count of a car every 6 minutes, that was done 3 months ago?
Nope, that would have been for the...
Sorry.
I need the mic.
2 mics.
No, that would have been done for the new design. So that information, I mean, he would have compiled it probably over the last month or so.
Okay.
And that stat is, like, I don't know if, is the report public? Like, I could send you the report if you want to read through the whole thing, but obviously in the slide, I can't show it all. So I kind of just wanted to, that's usually a pretty good way to show the worst case scenario at peak times. But if you wanted to see kind of, he breaks it down, it's like 96 pages, but I'd be more, anyone who wants to see it can see it. Yep.
I'm just more curious about when it was done, if it was done during COVID or if it was done pre-COVID. Because
The
if we're
data. I'm thinking the data collection, is that what you, that
Yeah,
when their
that's what I'm
data
getting
was
around.
actually collected,
Yeah.
the timing of that, I'm thinking is what you're after.
Yes, timing. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. It's a combination of, without getting too far into it.
You might have to get up again.
I
there.
can try and help with that.
Yeah, it's a combination of them taking physical data on site, but then there's a lot of, basically they put it into a program that
Okay.
futures the traffic as well.
Okay.
But Kevin can elaborate on it.
I think just to elaborate on the traffic, so there was physical traffic counts done. I don't know the exact time, but I do remember this being questioned at the public meeting last year. So the original traffic inputs were pre-COVID. I do remember that. But they get historical traffic counts from the Department of Transportation, and then they do projections forward based on certain percentage of growth over X number of years. And the traffic engineer spoke to it last year. They use a very high level of growth to ensure that they're not underestimating what the traffic projections are going to be, and just to ensure that, you know, this traffic engineer is hired by Landfest to do it on their behalf, and to ensure that it's reviewed by the local Department of Transportation, to ensure that they're in agreement with what the findings were by the design professional, and they did comment on the traffic analysis that was done last time, and they actually found a couple errors in it. So it did prove that they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they make sure that the projections are correct in the analysis, that they ultimately are in agreement with the analysis. I'm not sure the details of what was done this year to update it, but I did read it and read the conclusion, and we did forward it on to transportation for their comments, and they didn't see anything significant in that was there that drew any concerns to them. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah, that does help. Thanks.
Okay.
I think that was everything, so I'll leave it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lorianne McEwen, and I own and operate Island Montessori Academy. I have 3 locations. I have Cornwall, Charlottetown, and Stratford. And I just want to speak as a business owner, just to give a little bit of context as to what my business is seeing right now. I have 15 staff in Stratford, and a lot of our staff would like to live where they work. But to be honest, most of my staff cannot afford to live in Stratford. So when this meeting was brought to us, our staff asked if I would come and kind of represent them. As most people know, childcare doesn't earn a whole lot of money, and they're finding it very difficult. So I have a lot of certified staff that are asking to move to either our Cornwall or our Charlottetown location so they can afford to live where they work. So that is an important thing for our staff. We also have a number of families that have not moved to Stratford that were looking to buy a house here that either couldn't find one or couldn't afford one and have gone to our other campuses. We have a waiting list at our Stratford Center. We've actually been offered a grant by the Department of Education to expand our center because with the new pre-K program coming in, they are looking for spaces because there are so many children. But in order for us to invest more money in our location, a subdivision like this, I feel personally, would be a nice benefit because then you cover a broad spectrum of socioeconomic families, not just the ones that can afford to go and that can afford to live in Stratford. So that's just my 2 cents. And I thank you for not being mean.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dick Young. I live at Millennium, on Millennium, and just as Dan is a neighbor of Janet, I'm a neighbor of Dan's. And both spoke well regarding the R1 and the PERDs and everything. So I'm not going to touch on that too much, except say I do certainly agree with them. Quick comment on the young lady 2 speakers ago that asked a question about the property tax. That was pretty astute. I appreciate that. I'd be interested to see that number myself, because assuming R1 housing would be a lot more valuable than some of the other types of housing, the revenue stream may not change a whole lot if it was R1 as opposed to the PERD development. A couple of my, if I look into the future, sometimes you feel that land someday will probably be developed. We moved here in '04, and at that time Mr. Redden owned it. And I know at the time he really didn't think he'd ever sell it, and he certainly did sell it when he was approached by the people with enough money to buy it. But what it's going to be, hopefully council and planning committee and everybody will maintain the R1 status as we have spoken. But I want to speak about a couple of very minor issues that seem, so assuming there's going to be something there someday. For those of us that live on Millennium and Redden Heights especially, and Millennium is almost directly north of this construction site, which means the prevailing south wind that blows all summer will probably blow a lot of dust and everything into our backyards and even across the street to Millennium. And I don't know if there's, in a construction project like that, is there a provision to keep it watered, keep the dust down? I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but I know my wife likes to put the laundry out in the backyard on the thing all the time. So she wanted me to ask that question. And I think it's a good question because the sheets smell pretty good when they come in off the line. The other point is traffic. Now, I appreciate how they've reduced the traffic from that cul-de-sac onto Redden. But you know, when you live on Millennium, and anybody that's here from Millennium, surely has seen a significant increase in traffic in the last year when they built that little bypass at Purley Road through to the school.
Yep.
People are using Redden Heights and Millennium as a shortcut. If the Stratford Road has any type of traffic on it, and they come up our street fairly quickly. They don't come up at 20 clicks an hour. There's a lot of people driving up there pretty quickly. And one of my written summations last year was the fact that when you're going up, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's all these kids on bikes, you wouldn't believe how many come down and turn onto the bike path across the street from us, go on their way to school. And when you're going up Millennium with the grade and the east sun rising, you're blinded. Now, Millennium has no sidewalk. It's very narrow. And the walkers on Millennium have really increased. So we got a lot of walkers, a lot of kids, no shoulder, no sidewalk. And a rising sun in the morning that really impedes people driving up. So I don't know if there's any plan. Now, that would affect Redden to a certain degree too, not so much the sun. But I just wonder, as another point in this discussion, and I don't know what could be done about it, but maybe even speed bumps might help, but people drive on Millennium very quickly. Just come at 8 o'clock in the morning and watch them whip up and through and across to the school and see all the bicycles coming and people walking all hours of the day. So, like I say, the development, carefully consider what you approve here, please, on behalf of the residents. R1 would be great. Love to see the number. The lady talked about 2 speakers ago. But anyway, thank you for your time, and somebody's probably something more important than that to bring up.
Thank you for your comments. And we will get that number and find a way to get that out to you guys. I will figure that out. And John, I know John's on there. Feel free to chime in when you want to. But go ahead. Yep.
Hi, my name is Stephen Wynn. I live on 37 Millennium Drive, and I just wanted to make sure that I had a chance to express some of the numbers. Alana, your comments earlier, I actually did crunch some of the numbers, is what I did based on the town's website, their budget for 20 and 21. So I think really what has to be forecast here, not forecast, but has to be said here is that while I appreciate, the need for housing that is affordable for residents to work, or for people to work within the actual area in which they work. I do appreciate that. However, the residents around Millennium and Redden and so on have been clear, really for a variety of reasons that have been brought up over the last number of years, whether it is a year ago, whether it is 10 years ago. When we first had this meeting with Landfest, I was involved in that with Dick and Janet as well, and certainly I've appreciated that. We have to make clear that for aesthetic and financial reasons, they have to be adhered to, with regards to the concerns of the residents. The policy 42.1, the housing policy is clear in the fact that, if I could just for a second, in the fact that really identifying opportunities for zoning land potential to allow smaller lot sizes and higher densities, and I quote, without compromising the character of existing neighborhoods. We have 3 R1s around that property, and really putting a PERD in that place would compromise. Now, of course, I appreciate, Andrew, the fact that you did write that document. You made comments later in the fact that it could be argued, but I would argue that it can't. Your policy is your policy, and really it has to be adhered to. The numbers, however, therefore, I said to myself, do I wonder just exactly, is this a property tax thing? And I appreciate the numbers you crunched. I did them a little more detail. I found out that for example, for this particular property, and please correct me if I'm wrong in anything that I've done, I see 60 units with regards to townhouses, which I estimated at $300,000 apiece, which were numbers that were thrown around here earlier this evening, and as well as 26 single-dwelling units, and I estimated that at $500,000. The number $460,000 was given to me by John himself last year when I asked the question what a single dwelling was. So I rounded up, given COVID and the prices of wood and so on and so forth. So at 45 cents per $100 on those properties, what you would pull in is not $104,000 in taxes. You would pull in closer to $139,500. However, with the plan that was given to us in 2013, there was some agreement, I'm not saying total agreement, but some agreement with the 57 units. When you do the same number crunch on the same numbers, you do take in $126,000, which granted is $13,500 less. However, in your 2021 budget, you have a property tax revenue of $4.7 million. And so really $13,500 constitutes an increase of 0.0003%, which I would question, really I would ask you, what are the priorities of the council? Is it the concerns of your constituents, or is it the profits of your developers? Because I did do some of the number crunches based on some numbers, and I appreciate it's your job to make money. It is. But however, in the same 2 scenarios, at a 57 units on an R1, you will make around $28 million. And yes, I do understand there's expenses there. However, on a PERD, yes, you will increase it substantially to 31 million, according to my numbers. But nonetheless, even if my numbers are somewhat off, there's still an extra $3 million. And I come back to the question, I ask you what your priorities are. Is it the concerns of your constituents or the profits of your developers? Because your profits are going to be there nonetheless, yes, albeit smaller, but there has to be a balance between your developers and, of course, your constituents. We simply ask that any development is consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. It's been clear, and it's according to your own policy of 4.2.1, and that once again you take the good leadership you did last year, and that you heed the concerns of the constituents and you say no to a PERD, and that you actually make this a development as an R1, so as to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood, both financially and aesthetically. Thank you.
Thank you. The question on priorities, I will give you one thing. For when council does have to make this decision, and I'll get you, Kevin, to pull it up. There is actually set out in our policy 13 criteria that we have to walk through in this evaluation or a council decision. The financial piece is, I think, the last one. So to answer that question, the top two, I think, are, it has to be in accordance with the official plan is number one. Number two, I don't know, but the changing the character of the existing neighborhood, I think, is 4 or 5, somewhere in there. But there is a list of 13 criteria that we do consider in those decisions.
Do they all need to be met, or is it just so many? That's a question.
They all have to be considered, I would say. Official plan for sure has to be met. I think I have to bring it up here again. I know I used to have the list in my, do you guys have them with you?
Yep, I have it here.
Yeah, I'll get Kevin to read them off, and then I know they all have to be considered in the decision making.
So,
Jill, can you hear?
This falls under section 3.2 amendment procedures for the zoning development bylaw. So I'll skip to section 3.22. The Planning Development Heritage Committee and Council shall consider the following general criteria when reviewing applications for development bylaw or official plan amendments as applicable. A, conformity with all requirements of the bylaw. B, conformity with the official plan.
We can.
I'm quoting the sections of the bylaw so you can get them online if you choose. We can certainly send them to anybody if you want to contact us, but
distribute them, but
yeah, we can do that. C, conformity with provincial land use policies pursuant to the Planning Act. D, suitability of the site for proposed development, including the preservation of existing site features and earthworks as proposed. E, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. F, any comments from residents or other interested parties. G, adequacy of infrastructure such as water, sewer, road, stormwater, electrical services, and parkland. H, the economic and environmental viability of any proposed utility, road, extensions, or development and maintenance of public open spaces. I, impacts from the proposed development on all modes of transportation, including access and safety. J, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding environmental, aesthetic, scenic, and heritage features. K, impact on town finances and budgets. L, other matters as specified in this bylaw. And M, other matters as considered relevant by council.
I don't know if that helps that helps you anyway, but we can distribute. I know I have some of your emails, and I would absolutely distribute that, no problem.
Jill, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, John.
Can I make a comment, or is there feedback?
We're just turning our mics off, John.
Is that better? Okay. I just want to say the comparison of millions of dollars, that's actually revenue versus profit, and which are two big things, two different things. The revenue could approach $30 million. That is not profit. And again, I wanted to point out that the time that's been taken in developing this plan is that every single-family home on Admiral and Millennial has a single-family home bordering on it. There is no multis bordering on any single-family homes except for a rental property on Stratford Avenue. All the townhouses border on institutional, which is the church. So, you know, property values, safety, all those things have been taken into consideration. And I, you know, with the huge need for housing, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding how a single-family home against a single-family home is any different than is what's been done in the past when somebody south of, or I'm sorry, when people that were living on Millennial that were south of the people above them. We're putting single-family against single-family. I'd also like to say that, you know, again, I understand the Stratford Road, and I want to bring back the point. That is a collector road with a yellow highway line in the middle of it that would be at 20% capacity. We're done. Our development is not changing Stratford Road. Future development, as we get down the road, may influence that. That will have to be addressed at that point when the traffic study is done. But our homework has been done to prove that our traffic, our division is not going to increase or hinder safety and traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Back up and running. Yep.
I'm just going to, hi, my name is Ann Ramsey, and I live at 139 Campbell. So I'm in that cul-de-sac, which I actually do see a townhouse, that I'll be looking at a townhouse, a single, and a single. So I really feel like I will have a lot to look at, which is just something I wanted to bring up. And the other major thing is, in the last year, we have seen such an increase on that trail. It is just blossomed. And we hear kids laughing and going, and I don't know how safe they would feel taking that trail with the road that has those townhouses and houses coming onto it. It would scare me. Because like I say, those kids, they bike by themselves. It's their independence, and I don't know if there's some way we can, I don't know. That trail has really blossomed over the last year. Well, since we moved in 4 years ago, it's just increased drastically. And it's so wonderful to see young families playing on it, going on it. I mean, I know there will be more, but I'm worried more about the road, the access on that trail. We are aiming for active transport. And like I say, if you go to the school, you will see so many bicycles there now. So that's my point.
Thank you, Ann.
Maybe if I could, just to try and speak to the active transportation component and the road crossing it. I think when this application came forward originally, and for those who remember when we were talking about this back in 2010 to 2012, the main access point was similar to what's being shown here today. The active transportation trail was not in place at that time. It has since been put in place. When the developer came back and made their proposal last year, I remember the designer quite being quite firm with the town that they should protect the active transportation trail and they should not cross it. And when planning board had their first look at this, there was two options given to them at that time. Should we be crossing the active transportation trail and bringing the majority of the traffic onto the Stratford Road, or should we be allowing the proposal, as was being submitted, to have the majority of the traffic come through Redden Heights? At that time, based on the traffic information that was submitted, Planning board recommended to keep the active transportation component protected and not cross it. We all know the results of what happened. We went through the public meeting, council deliberated, and ultimately that proposal was denied. So I think, in fairness to the developer, they're trying to come up with an option that they're being told the other option was not something that council is willing to support. It would be the second option from planning board's consideration. They liked the idea of protecting the active transportation component, and I do believe it's a very heavily utilized and will be more utilized as the core area develops. It's an active transportation spine is what we would call it. You know, crossing the new road is not ideal, but there are potential options that could be put in. If anyone remembers the speed table that was on Marion Drive, where Pearly Way is now constructed, it had to be removed because the new intersection was put in. There could be the possibility of a speed table, which is a raised, kind of a modified speed bump that has the crosswalk on top of it. So that potentially could be something that could be done to make that active transportation component safer. But I just wanted to kind of make sure that we had the background on that and talk about what some potential options could be to try and ensure that it's safe.
Thanks, Kevin. Leslie?
Good evening. My name is Leslie Collins, and I live in the zone. I was lucky enough to get the letter. Again, I really want to thank my neighbors for speaking up and doing a lot of research and a lot of work and putting their thoughts together. Everything you've said reflects how I feel and how our household feels about this. So I don't have a whole lot more to add. I chuckle if the same traffic study that thought the last setup was good is the one that's saying this one is good. Leave that as it is. I was insulted with the thought that I'm expected to buy out a company that bought an R1 business because he can't change it on 3 or 4 attempts, so that's the only resolution. I know that wasn't our committee, or I mean the town council or whatever that recommended that, but I think that's absolutely insulting to me that we have these meetings so that we can express ourselves, not that we can be told we have to buy somebody out if we don't like what we're hearing. I also moved to the Stratford area and absolutely enjoy the country living feel in the more urban structure, and to jam more properties or houses into the confined area is not what we moved here for. It's not why I purchased my land for. I would have thought a plot of empty land near my home that was surrounded by 3 R1s would pretty much secure that it would also remain an R1. I'm troubled that the planning committee is seeing fit that that particular location is prime for a PUR development. I understand that business owners want to have their employees who want to live in the area. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's a reason I'm living in Stratford. But I'm not so sure there's any guarantee that any of these places are going to be affordable by anybody any more than any of the other homes in Charlottetown or Cornwall. I'm finding that really difficult to believe. I've had a daughter just sell a home in Charlottetown and had to move to the country. To think that all of a sudden this development's going to make it easy for people to afford houses hasn't been shown to me at any point. I raised the same issue the last time. I said that I was concerned that the representation was that this is going to alleviate housing issues, but I've yet to hear that any of these are going to be affordable for even me. So I guess that's probably it, but I really, really hope our councillors continue to listen to the people of this area. We repeatedly come back, and no matter what chart was presented as to what the issues are, I agree with all the issues that were raised, so you can give me a red star, a green star, orange star, whatever star you want, but I want us to be heard, and I want to be heard for all the reasons that are here, and I really appreciate the people that have spoken before me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I got a couple of texts to say there's no volume on the other end, but I don't know if anyone out in Facebook world can. I think all signs look good here, but hopefully we're good? Okay. All right. We are at 8 o'clock. I'm not going to turn anyone away from the mic, but if there are some people that do feel like they'd like to get up tonight, feel free, and we'll try to fit in a couple more before the next meeting starts.
My name is Jay MacDonald. 4 years ago, my wife and I moved into a lovely home on Glen Cove Drive. We've enjoyed Stratford very much after having spent about 40 years in Charlottetown. This is a joyful place, wonderful place to be. So this development does not directly affect us. Traffic, certainly, those sorts of things, and development does have to happen. The only thing I really came about was what's happening to the water. The little bit of a wetland and stream comes down, but that also then feeds what we call the Glen Cove Delta, where the water is filled in that feeds into Stewart Cove. And it's quite shallow. And I don't know what plans there are to carry the water that travels through that swale, and it does go through during construction. Is it going to be cut off? Is it going to be diverted? Will there be less during construction? Will there be less following construction? Where is the water management that you had alluded to going to direct the runoff from the lots and the houses as the houses are developed, and the engineers have to say, well, it'll go here and it'll go to the left, it'll go to the right. From my point of view, it would be ideal if more went into that swale, because that would then keep the water flowing better down into Stewart Cove. I found the trail this past year. I started walking around. And this year in April, there was a single-family home being built right alongside the trail. Maybe you haven't seen it, but each morning I would go by, and the couple that was building it was going about their business, and they were extremely happy. And I couldn't go through without having a smile on my face. Those two red-winged blackbirds were so happy to be in that place. And it made it wonderful for me to walk through. And I have no idea what will happen during construction and afterwards. If the red-winged blackbirds will perhaps say that they have to move someplace else. They might not come back. Maybe there'll be others that will. It's possible. I share the concerns of the people who are looking at change in their living arrangements. And I can't say that I wish it always stayed as a lovely path for me to enjoy with the red-winged blackbird, but it is a piece of joy that I have had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Absolutely, yep.
I honestly thought this would come up before now. The construction runoff is a big one. Every meeting I've ever attended or been a part of, it's always a concern because you're taking a grassy area that is able to absorb water and you're putting dirt on it for a hopefully short period of time. The run-of-the-mill answer is that the Department of Transportation has a whole plan in place. Whether you agree it's good enough, I'm not going to get into that. But they do have strict guidelines on, how much are you stripping in terms of the grass off the soil, and then therefore you'd either have to have a retention pond to temporarily hold the water, so the silt doesn't run into the swale, or you'd have to have kind of like silt fencing so that it filters the water before it gets to the swale. So we'd have to follow those guidelines, and at this point, we don't. That's more like an engineer would have to do that, but we're not quite at that stage yet. And then to your point with the swale, I didn't elaborate on it too much, but the swale, like I said, it has the capacity to handle all the water once the subdivision is completed. The main concern they had was the speed of the water. Actually, if there's like a high, large rainfall, it travels quite quickly down there. So one thing that they suggested is kind of teardropping in one area of the swale so that it slows down. It pools in that area so that it's not coming down at a rapid pace. The other thing is that the one thing I'll say is the majority of the subdivision, we're lucky enough that it's a field. So the treed areas that we're working with that are all the established trees. It's been a big focus from the start, even before I started working for the company, that area was to be preserved in the top area, mainly because it has existing large mature trees. So there was never always a notion to keep that. And we have more green space in the subdivision than we're required to have. Yeah, I think those are the 2 points, so yeah.
And Kevin, I don't know if the town requires a full stormwater management plan upon the approval of subdivision, or subdivision.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. The kind of the simple way to kind of wrap it up or to make people understand it is there can be a net zero increase of the amount of water leaving the property post-development as there is pre-development. So the only way that water can be controlled is it has to be stored. And there's different storage techniques. There's wet ponds and there's dry ponds, and there is an existing drainage swale here, which I understand that the engineers say there is capacity in it. They would probably, as Andrew suggested, they would probably put some tiering in it that would create small ponds that would slow the actual flow of water down and hold it over a period of time, release it slowly so the downstream impact is not, there's not upgraded structures required downstream. That's essentially what the principle is behind the stormwater management plans.
Thank you. All right.
Is this swale, I've been confused, like, I don't even know what the swale is. Are you down beside the path there?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it runs down there to the church property and so on. That's called the swale. That's
correct. That's an engineered swale. It was actually constructed in partnership by the town of Stratford back when the Sobeys development was actually being done in around 98, 99.
Yeah, no, I understand now.
Yeah.
I assumed that's what it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's kind of that angled white line.
Yeah.
I actually live right at the swale, and I can tell you there's been a difference, and I really would like a town engineer to come and talk, and I have videos of the water running through there.
Certainly, because there's been development upstream. Absolutely. That's why you're seeing.
Like, if there's going to be, like, we're starting to lose part of our land, it's going to erosion because of the amount of water and the speed. Like, it's substantially increased back there.
The Sobeys property is expanding, and they do have a retention pond on their property for the new portion that is being constructed now. So there are, but the existing Sobeys development is all paved parking lot with catch basins, and there's no retention on that property because it was designed to go down through this engineered swale. So the swale is designed to have, I can't remember the numbers now, up to a certain depth of water, but it has a flat bottom in it and a certain slope in it to prevent the speed from going over what's considered a dangerous level. So, you know, I'm not the engineer, but I can certainly, yeah.
But I really would like someone to come, because I actually do have videos of it.
Yep.
Because and it rising.
Oh yeah, no,
Okay, folks, we're going to have to get back
yeah,
to my rules
we gotta
here
use
soon.
the microphones.
Don't make me get mean. Yeah, if there is comments, just for the benefit of those, it's more for the benefit of those watching. They can't hear you if you're not at a microphone, so it's just for the benefit of those.
Just have one quick question then. The emergency road that's expectation that that would have to be plowed?
So Leslie is asking if the emergency road would be plowed. You're referring to the emergency road that connects the cul-de-sac to the main road. Is that something that would be plowed?
It's labeled as an emergency access, and from the town's perspective, from the Department of Transportation's perspective, it's not actually something that's required. If there's no more than 100 units being accessed from either direction, there is no secondary access required in here. It was an item of discussion during the proposal last year, so I think the developer is trying to show that if this is something that people feel is needed, they're offering an alternative solution. So they're not proposing to connect the streets directly through because they've heard that people don't want that, but they did hear that people were concerned about the number of units that were being accessed. So they're providing it's an active transportation connection, ideally is what it is. But I think the idea behind it is that it would have some type of a crash gate or something that would be controlled, so prevent everyday traffic from being able to go through it. But in the event of an emergency, fire department or somebody could unlock or cut the locking mechanism on the crash gate and drive a vehicle through it. So if it is going to be used in that fashion, it would have to have the snow removed off of it the full width. I hope that answers your question.
Hey there, Joe.
Not really applicable, but I can almost guarantee you what it will be used for is if you live anywhere kind of below, kind of on the Redden Heights area. It's a way that you can have access to the rest of the subdivision as well and get to the swale and the trail. I know you can go up Millennium and access it, but it will probably, hopefully, never be used for an emergency vehicle. It'll be mainly a way that residents in other parts of the neighborhood can access the subdivision as a whole. Because if we didn't have it, it would be owned by someone and technically you'd be trespassing on the property. So it's kind of a way that, hopefully that's what it's used for, and in the odd chance, an ambulance may have to go down it.
Thank you. Wendy? John?
Yeah, I just want to say that the Department of Transportation recommended that access be there because of the depth of the cul-de-sacs from Stratford Road. I think that's it, Kevin.
Was there anything you wanted to add there, John?
No, I just saying, like, I was referring to Kevin that I think that's what they suggested. Like Kevin said, it's not 100% necessary, but it was a suggestion if we put it in.
Perfect, thanks. All right. If there's no further comments, I'll talk next steps, if everyone's good with that. So this will go to Planning Board for discussion and potential recommendation I guess it will carry a recommendation to Council. That's going to happen on July 5th, the planning meeting. Then there'll be a Town Council meeting for decision on July 14th, 2021. That'll be the first reading. If it goes through the first reading, then there'll be a special Town Council meeting for decision July 15th, the day after, where second reading and adoption and the development scheme approval would be put through. So again, this video, you can, if you have to revisit any of the comments tonight, it'll be online. It's on the town's YouTube account and Facebook account. And we'll receive any further comments that you have, anything that comes to mind, until June 30th at noon will be the cutoff for any. So question about where the submissions go. They'll take them handwritten notes at the town. You can email to Kevin Reynolds. He's on the town website. That's probably the most direct avenue. I know I've had people email me, like in Ward 2, they email their councillors, and the councillors will forward it on to Kevin to make sure it's in the file. So there's lots of options there, whatever's easiest.
And Blaine's contact information is in the ad and was on the letters that most people had received as well. So Blaine, myself, or hand delivered to the town hall. Any form is accepted.
And there was another question at the back here. I can.
Yeah, in the event that this does go through, which I hope it doesn't, speak R1, but my big concern is getting the vehicles up there to do the loaders and graders and trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going in off Stratford Road?
So the question is, if this does happen to go through and construction starts, where are the construction vehicles accessing? Is that something that's worked out? Will they be coming off the Stratford Road?
If it's something that, it could be worked out during the subdivision agreement, that construction traffic, if the concern is that they don't want construction traffic through the local residential subdivisions, such as Redden Heights, there could be, I'm sure there could be something worked out that the construction traffic would have to come in off the Stratford Road. That would be something we'd have to discuss with the developer, but.
I think it should be discussed before this gets to that part, because I live in Redden Heights, and I certainly don't want that traffic going up and down. It is not a road, it's a street. You know what I'm saying? This is our community, our street. I don't want big bulldozers and graders and trucks and image in the dust, like the same as India's idea last year, gonna put everything through Redden Heights. Like it's a little street, not even a sidewalk on it. So I'm not putting up with that.
Just for the record, so I'm just reiterating, so it goes into the record that there's a very, a huge concern for that construction traffic coming through Redden Heights.
I can speak to it.
Okay.
It's actually, the development probably will start in, obviously it's a big project, and although I can't be 100%, it only makes sense to start with phase 1 being off the Stratford Road. So to answer your question, the majority of the traffic and the subdivision itself will probably work itself from the from the Stratford Road, being the townhouses there, and funnel its way up towards the top. So to answer your question, the majority of the traffic will be off Stratford Road. I can't guarantee that no machinery when the cul-de-sac right off of Redden Heights. Obviously I can't be 100%, but I will say that naturally the subdivision will work its way towards your corner. So most of the machinery will only have access to the area from Stratford Road, because there won't be anything off of Redden Heights yet.
Another thing?
Yeah.
I might ask you to come to the mic if it's going to be multiple items.
Hi, my name is Brenda Martin. I live in Redden Heights. And the other question I have, along with the traffic and the bulldozers and the graders and the big trucks and loads of fill, I don't want them going up our street. That's our street. It's not a roadway, it's a street. Now I forget what I was going to say when I get up here. Oh, if this does go through, like what, next spring? Any general idea when the construction's going to be?
I'm not making light of it, but we've been trying this for, I think we're on 7 years at this point. So if it does get approved, this building season is gone. So it would be next year. Probably.
So just to...
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I'll help you out. So Andrew's saying that this building season is gone. Chances are it would probably be next year, next spring.
So is there going to be any input from the residents on our street when the construction starts? Because there's no way. There's not enough room anyway. The school buses can hardly get down there if a car is parked on the side of the road. So I don't think it's fair to put that through our street, or John Hamilton for that matter, or Millennium. So, I
Kevin
mean,
had-
that's a big thing that has to be looked into, or, you know what I mean?
Kevin
if I
has
might,
a comment here.
And I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm trying to clarify whether it's a drive or a road or heights.
It's a street.
Okay, so here's the clarification.
Okay.
All local streets in Stratford are all the same width. They're all designed the same way. I've heard numerous times that the streets within this area are narrower than they are in any other jurisdiction. They are not. They're provincially designed streets. They have the same road width, the same right-of-way width. The only difference within Stratford from a local street is a collector street, and Stratford Road is considered a collector street, which is wider and has paved shoulders. So I know people say they think it's narrower, but established streets with trees and whatnot on them out closer to the right-of-way give you the impression that the street is actually narrower, but it's not. They're all the same size.
And I'm not arguing that point. The point is the traffic,
No,
the
I've
stuff
just heard it
going up
before, and
down.
I just want to clarify, that's
Yeah.
all.
So, council or whoever better look into where the big rigs are gonna be going, because I don't think it's fair to put it up anybody's street. Like Stratford Road, if you wanna go in through the development where they're building, that's one thing, but I don't want it on our street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't pause.
All right, folks. I walked through all the next steps. So, yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to contact anyone here, and we'll try to get responses out to you. Yeah, Kevin made lots of notes. So if there's anything left over, action items here, we'll take a bit of a debrief tomorrow and make sure we're answering those questions that were left unanswered tonight for some reason. So I want to thank you all for coming out. And exit is through this door tonight. That's the exit door. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We are a little behind. The last meeting ran a little long, so I apologize to you folks, and I apologize to the folks online that were listening as well. I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge the land upon which we gather is unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and we pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq of people of this territory, past, present, and future. I'm trying a new thing out again tonight. I stated at the first two meetings, and I'm going to do it again. Just taking a moment before we start to, I guess, talk a little bit about intention, and that we're all here tonight with intention, and that's to ensure we're working together to build a strong community. I encourage all attendees, council staff, everyone here in this room, everyone online, to listen with intent, to understand, and not listen with intent to reply. We're all guilty of that, and so I think that's just a good thing to keep top of mind in these types of meetings. So I challenge you all to do that tonight. Introductions. I'm Jill Burridge. I'm a counselor with the town of Stratford, and I also chair the Planning, Development, and Heritage Committee. With us tonight, we have the mayor, Mayor Steve Ogden with us, and we have the council are still in the room, Kay. The other councilors went in a boardroom in the building just to ensure there was lots of room for the public to come in here. So they're in the building, but they were just making room for everyone else. And also we have staff here. I have Kevin Reynolds, the Director of Planning, next to me. We have the Town Planner, Blaine Yatabi, here. We have CAO Robert Hughes at the back of the room. And we have Jeremy Crosby, which I missed on the last one. I just noticed him halfway through. So he's the Deputy CAO and Director of Infrastructure. Wendy Watts at the back, manning social media to make sure your messages get through. And also online, we have Stefan from Upland. He's the designer of the community campus. We have Mark McDonald from CBCL. He's an engineer with CBCL that's done a lot of work on this. And we'll get to Samantha's introduction as we move through this. She's going to present tonight on behalf of the town, Samantha Murphy. And I think that's all my introductions. If you have to use the bathroom at some chance tonight, you'll just go out that door, go down the hall, and they're on your left. And then tonight when we're leaving, we'll get you to go through that door, in that door and out this door. So that's how our operational plan is designed, and we'll follow that. With that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Yep. Thank you, Jill. Just to give a brief overview, so there's three individual applications that are all kind of grouped together here. And for anybody that received notification or had seen the ad in the newspaper, these are all grouped together, and they're all somewhat linked to the community campus project. Applications have been received from S.J. Murphy Planning and Consulting on behalf of the town of Stratford, Ian Dalton, 101-523 PEI Inc., Paul and Robert Farquharson, and Jane Farquharson, and Doug Crosman for amendments to the Town of Stratford Official Plan and Zoning Development Bylaw number 45. The proposed amendments will allow for the development of a proposed community campus and future residential development, as well as additional industrial development adjacent to the business park. Some of the subject area was previously located within town boundaries, resulting in a request for changes in designation and zoning for those portions, while other portions have recently been annexed into the town, requiring a process to assign new designations and new zoning.
All right, thanks for that. And we'll now call Samantha Murphy to come up, and she's going to present. She's with S.J. Murphy Planning and Consulting, and she's basically had the lead on this file for us at the town. So thank you, Samantha, and go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for starting with the land acknowledgement, so I'll assume that that covers me as well. Thank you, folks, for coming out. This is a complicated parcel, so we've split the presentation into three different proposals because there are 3 different parties, but it's all sort of the same land area. So we'll go one at a time, but they are linked. And I do want to acknowledge that there are 2 parties named in the applications who have participated really at our request, at my request and outreach, because of the location of their properties. So it's not necessarily an active application on a few parts, but we've been looking at proper and sound planning and looking at the future, and if a parcel is being surrounded by the subject properties, then we've included them. So I am going to start with the town's proposal for the community campus, and we'll look at the proposal background, the nature of the changes, and then we'll have questions on this one, and then we'll move on to the next. So in this case, the application deals with both the official plan and the bylaw. When a zoning change affects the land use map in the official plan, then both documents need to be changed. So in all 3 cases, because we're changing from categories of use and not just density, we have to look at both documents. In this case, we're also looking at a textual amendment to the official plan, and as well as a zoning amendment. So the first proposal we're looking at deals with changes in zoning, changes in designation. We're looking at a community campus, which is a proposed institutional use, as well as an expansion at the bottom of the property, the southern end, which will deal with industrial uses. The textual amendment deals with associated uses in an institutional zone, allowing for restaurants and lounges as a secondary use only. So this is not intended to create a new category of use in the institutional area. But if you look at many institutional activities, there'll often be some sort of food or beverage service there, whether it's a rink or a curling club or even a school with a cafeteria. The other piece that I've included in this proposal, the properties that have been annexed are currently part of the special planning area in the Stratford region. The town has made application to the province for the regulations to be amended so that the special planning area would follow the new town boundary. A decision has not been made on that request yet, so we do need to include consideration of textual policies for the official plan, recognizing that these developments would be serviced and therefore respecting the intentions of the special planning area. So this is the area, and this is all 3 applications in one. You can see for this one we're looking only at the yellow and the gray. The yellow area we're looking at changing for the parcel 1, which is the centerpiece, that was already within town boundaries. So that is being proposed to be changed from agricultural reserve to institutional. To the right of it, parcel 2, is part of the same property, but it was outside the town boundary until June 1st. So it does not have any designation or zoning at this time. So again, it's part of the community campus proposal, and we're looking at an institutional designation and zoning for that one. At the bottom of that, you see parcel 3, which is in gray, and that's the proposed expansion of the business park area. You see some gray, some lighter gray there, and that's already zoned and designated for industrial use. So this is rounding that part out so that the business park uses in that area can be expanded. I'll talk about the green ones in the next parts, in the next presentations. Oh, sorry, you're right. And there is another parcel here, parcel 4, which is currently designated and zoned for agricultural use, and it is part of the acquisition that the town has pursued, so that would also be part of the community campus property and would be changed from agricultural to institutional. The community campus proposal has been in public discussion for quite some time. There were public meetings to discuss the range of uses that could go on this property and how those uses might connect to each other. I know there were some workshops in August of 2018 and May of 2019 and discussion in public ever since. The town's been working quite hard for a while to find a suitable location that had enough space to accommodate the potential institutional uses, the school, and the recreational facilities that might go on the property. The property in the proposal does include space for the new high school that would be built by the province. There's also reserve if needed for a junior high with the space there, but that's not part of any current consideration. There is a concept plan design process underway, and you were saying that Stefan is online and listening, so he's been involved. I haven't been involved in that part, but if we need, we can speak to him. And there was a phase 1 environmental assessment undertaken to understand the state of the property. Further environmental impact assessments, if needed, would take place at the development stage. The property as it's developed would be fully serviced. The primary access, based on just the location of the property, would be from the Bunbury Road. For the community campus, and that would also connect all the way down to Hollis in the business park area. I just don't have it on this particular graphic. This is the original concept. So this obviously does not fit the site. This is not what it will look like in the end. When the work was done at the time, it was sort of a flat surface exercise, but it gives you a sense of the types of uses that are being envisioned. The actual final uses will be developed through the town's public processes, funding, all the other opportunities and components that have to come together. But it gives you a sense of a campus approach to recreation and institutions. And as I noted, there's also a proposed expansion, just the darker gray here, parcel 3, and that would be an expansion to the business park. And that was also part of the area that was previously outside the town boundaries. As part of this proposal, there is one residential property that's being included, and that is at the town's initiative and with the property owner's permission, because the part of the parcel that extends north of the Bunbury Road would have surrounded the parcel, and so it would not have been appropriate to extend the town boundary but skip a parcel. So that is involved in this proposal for that reason, but not at the property owner's initiative. And in that case, there is already a 2-unit dwelling on the property, so it's already developed at this time. So the changes that are being requested in zoning is for parcel 814095, which is the existing duplex dwelling, would be residential on the land use map and the official plan, and R1 low density residential on the zoning map. Parcels 608141, and there's 3 components there. 1 and 2 would be institutional. One of that's a new designation because it's newly within the boundaries. The other is a change from agricultural. And the zoning would be PSI for both of those. And then parcel 3, which is the industrial area, would be a new zoning, designation of industrial, and M1 industrial zoning. And then parcel 4, which is the innermost aspect of the community campus component of this project, would be redesignated from agricultural to institutional, and a zoning of PSI. So it's a lot of many pieces in one proposal, which makes this a little more complicated to explain. There are textual amendments proposed as well, as mentioned, and this is largely just to ensure that depending on the types of recreational and institutional uses that might go on this property, that secondary uses would be permitted. So this is not seeing standalone restaurants or lounges. It would have to be associated with a primary use. And this is not just for this parcel. This would apply anywhere where there's an institutional zone or use in the municipality. And you even think of a hospital and there is a coffee shop and those sorts of activities. So you don't want to create a situation where those ancillary uses are not permitted. So this is the official plan text. So in this section of the official plan, there's a policy about recreational facilities contributing to economic development, and the red text is the proposed addition of permitting restaurants and lounges and other ancillary uses associated with recreation and institutional uses. And this is what the bylaw would look like. So it's simply adding that one line at the end of the list of permitted uses. And again, it's accessory to the main use, so it would not be a standalone. This is a very thick paragraph. This is the piece about the special planning area. And if the special planning area is not amended, then this type of policy text needs to be in the official plan to acknowledge that the town is not seeking to increase the amount of land that's being developed with on-site services, that it's protecting the agricultural activities beyond the town's boundaries by ensuring that there is a serviced level of development within the town's boundaries. So it's a statement to respect the objectives set out in 63.3 of the subdivision and development regulations. And I believe this application, if someone wants to see the text, is on the website.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to read the full text, because it is quite dense. But that's largely what it's about, is saying that the town, in considering development, will look at those 3 objectives of the special planning area. So we'll stop at this point. This is the community campus component. And as we go through the other 2 applications, we can always go back if there's questions, because they are linked, but I'll open it up at this point for this particular proposal.
Yeah, I'll ask, so open mic for any comments, questions. I'll ask you when you go to the mic to identify yourself and your affiliation or address if you happen to live close by, so we can get it on record. Okay, well, if anything comes up as I speak about the next ones, feel free to we can go back. Oh, so it's 3 different actual presentations because I did it that way. So the next application is for the other portion of parcel 608141, and this is the portion that's north of the Bunbury Road, and it's being put forward by 101523 PEI Inc. So again, same format. I'll go over the proposal overview, the proposed changes, and then we can go through questions if there are any. In this case, we're looking at map amendments only. This is land that was entirely outside the town's boundaries before June 1st, and so it has no current zoning or designation, and needs, one way or another, some form of designation and zoning needs to be placed on this property. As I said, it's newly annexed. We do need the designation and zoning, and the application in this case is for low-density residential R1, and that would be a land use designation of residential. The development concept at this time is 27 to 40 residential lots. They'd be fully serviced. The number of lots will be finalized at the time of subdivision. So at this point, that's a range, but it would be whatever's permitted within the standards in the zone. So as you can see, it's that portion of the parcel that's north of the Bunbury Road. And you can see the other parcel I mentioned previously that's fully surrounded here. The access would be through the Duffy Road rather than the Bunbury Road. And again, this is preliminary only. It's a sample of what a subdivision here might look like. The design would be developed at the actual stage of subdivision, but it would be a road coming off of Duffy Road and then the standard access from Duffy to Bunbury. So it is proposed for low density use. The full subdivision concept would be proposed, it would be submitted at the time of subdivision. It would be a public road as with any other subdivision in the town and would be deeded to the province at the end. And in our outreach to transportation, no concerns have been raised at this time, and then as these properties and the community campus are fully developed, then those sorts of details get fleshed out a little bit more. So these, I've just included it and I know they were referenced in an earlier presentation tonight, but this is the list of permitted uses within the R1 zone. And you see single dwellings, secondary dwelling units, home occupations, active and passive recreation, accessory buildings, private garages, and general agricultural use, with conditional uses of duplex or semi-detached dwellings up to 20 units in a block. And there is another category again, but that's a special permit use and requires a public meeting. So in summary, it is a request for residential designation and R1 low density residential zoning. It's only the maps, it's not a textual amendment, and this is the same use that's been proposed since the boundary proposal was put forward. So I'll open to questions on this particular application. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Kerry Taylor, live in 97 Duffy Road, Stratford. Longest resident on that side of the road, 35 years. I have one concern of this proposal, and I have absolutely no issue whatsoever with subdivision. That's not it. It's the Duffy Road itself. The Duffy Road doesn't approach the Bunbury Road at 90 degrees. There's a major catch basin at the edge of that road, and if you were taking a right turn, it's a big difference since they did the bottom. But if you're taking a right turn and you try to avoid the catch basin, you're out into the oncoming traffic. And it's just every morning when there's kids waiting for buses and that traffic, it's extremely dangerous. There's going to be a major accident there. And so I have a real concern with the new proposed campus, and you say the access is going to be off the Bunbury Road. And I know the people that live on the Larkins right there and stuff know that the amount of traffic that's on that road in the morning is significant. What I want to see is when you're planning this school and you're planning this subdivision, that we don't want to see an access to the campus property and the Duffy Road stay. Something has to give there. There either has to be the Duffy Road access shut off and an access, a roundabout somewhere's there, or they can't be misaligned, because that's going to cause even more grief. And in the interim, I mean, I'd like to see town council do something with the alignment of the Duffy Road, because it is a significant safety issue. So I don't think you're going to find any of the residents that are in that area that will not be significantly concerned about that issue. Other than that, I have no issue, and I hope the developers that are going to develop the property down there push for that as well, because it's going to mean the safety and a more sellable thing if there's a proper alignment of the school access and the Duffy Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. You go right ahead, Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Richard. I live at 431 Bunbury, so just east of the green along the road. My question is about R1. What's the next level up? R2, and is that medium density? Okay, and that would be row townhouse kind of structures, or is that?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Generally allows for single, 2-unit semi, or possibly townhouses as a conditional use, I believe is the plane, in an R2 zone. Yeah.
Okay, so R1 wouldn't have like townhouses.
It won't have townhouses, but it does as a conditional use. It allows for 20% of the units to be R2.
Okay,
yeah.
So that would be duplexes. And
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
But
yep.
not 3 or 4 unit.
Correct. 2 units only.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You go right ahead.
Ask a question from the chair.
You can. I'll just have to repeat you. Yeah. I'll just. Okay. Perfect.
We've got several questions about this whole development, which include the scale of the development, which should include what's going on down the road. There's a new subdivision going in. I think it's the Gray Group who's putting it in. We've got, this will be developed, and there are other developments being planned along that 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer stretch of road. So the gentleman that got up to talk about traffic is one of the major issues. But I just wanted to know, Samantha, you mentioned it in your presentation, I think, a phase 1 environmental assessment that's been conducted. And also there's a traffic study that's been complete. Could you talk to us about those things?
I'll just reiterate, just for the only reason I have to do this is because online they can't hear you without the microphone. So just wanted to mostly talk about a phase 1 environmental assessment. Has that been done? And the answer is yes. And transportation study, has that been done? And the answer is yes, and we have Mark McDonald here from CBCL to speak to any questions. If you have specific questions on the transportation, we can have him speak to those.
Yes,
Yeah.
I should come up with it.
Well, I guess if it's multiple items and it's extended, it might be easier, yeah.
It's not multiple items, it's one in particular, and I just call it the scale of development that's going on in Stratford in general, but proposed along the Bunbury Road specifically.
Yes.
And if there's a traffic study has been completed, I think we should know about it, and what's included in that study, and what are the results of that study, and what was the methodologies used to get to your conclusions, I think would be important for us to know that. The other issue is, how do you define environment when you talk about environmental assessment? Is it the community environment? Is it the physical environment? What kind of an environmental assessment have you conducted?
Well, I guess I'm probably not the right person to answer that. Jeremy or Robert are probably, but it is a physical scope of that particular site that is included in the environmental assessment. But I'm not an expert, Jeremy. I might get you to speak to what might have been included in that, or Robert.
Okay, so the two gentlemen can speak to those questions. That would be
Absolutely,
great.
yeah. Sorry about that, Doug.
The phase one environmental assessment is an assessment of the property to look at the uses of the property in the past to make sure there was no contamination issue on the property before we acquired it. So it looks at if there was any, underground tanks or any contamination issues on the property, if there was any dump sites, just looking to make sure that, it was a pristine property and there was no contamination issues on there. And if there were any contamination issues, that they needed to be rectified before we did purchase. So that's what a phase one environmental assessment is for, and there was nothing found. Okay.
So Jeremy, while you're still there,
yeah,
what would be the next phase of environmental assessment? It was mentioned that would happen at the development stage. So what would be the next level?
So the question, just so we repeat it, what would be the next level of environmental assessment once it gets into construction is the question.
It would depend on the development that's going to be put in there. There could be an environmental impact assessment that may have to be done to look at stormwater, the type of vegetation that's on there and such. But we'll have to see what happens when we go to the next stage of development at that time. Yep.
That's almost too late. Now, the project will be underway by the time that assessment's done.
So just to, and just so that I'm not confusing everyone in the room and online, I will probably ask you from here on in to go to the mic with comments, just because, just so everyone benefits, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's fine.
My name is Lauren Larkin. I live at 184 Bunbury Road. The top of that field goes on a steep grade down to a wetland, and I don't know how you're going to protect that. But if the building's already underway, by the time they do this assessment, they're just going to push it through anyway. So the environmental assessment that Jane was talking about should be done now.
It's not that the environmental assessment would be done when construction is being completed. It'd be when the concept plan is done. If there's anything required in order to look at any further environmental issues on the property, they would be addressed before the construction does begin. So I think it would address your concerns. Okay.
Maybe I could just jump in for a quick second on the traffic aspect that was asked, and Mark will be able to give some more detailed information on this. So there was a traffic impact statement that was prepared, and so there's information within that talks about the future developments that are going to happen on the property. A lot of it is and maybe Mark will be better to explain this, but a lot of it is at a very high level at this point in time. So what the design consultants are basically saying is, until the exact locations of some of these things that are going to be located on the property are known, they need they need to know the location better, and they'll help plan where these things are going to go to ultimately make the traffic work the best to prevent issues from happening, such as if the Bunbury Road is an issue with the number of vehicles going towards it, the layout of the campus could be adjusted to ensure that the higher volumes of trip generations are not directed towards the Bunbury Road. So maybe Mark, I'll let you add to that. But
that's about all I was going to say, Kevin. Yes, you've covered it very well. So what we've done so far is it's a traffic impact statement. It is a very high level assessment that did we only looked at the campus proper. We haven't looked at Bunbury Road as a whole, or we haven't looked at the future R1 development here, or the Concord development that's coming down the pipe. One of the main recommendation is that more study be done once the campus planning is further along, and once there's more known about exactly what's going to be within the campus, and that study should look at Bunbury Road. It should look at the major intersections on the Trans-Canada Highway and other major intersections as well. Obviously the access points to the campus itself, in conjunction with any other future developments that should be considered.
And maybe to add to that a little bit as well, the traffic impact statement was forwarded to the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and we did receive comments back from the transportation engineer from the province, and they are reiterating that there is definitely more detail required. Particularly, you're talking there could be an ice surface in here. How big would the ice surface be? How many seats would be in it? A lot of those things have direct relation to the amount of trips that are generated. So they have flagged some of the things at a high level to say, when more detail are known about these things and where they're going to be located and where the synergies are going to be between uses within the property. They're talking about ways to try and reduce parking, and they're talking about ways to use active transportation to reduce trips to the community campus. So there's a number of ways that the design can be done that it's going to potentially limit traffic issues, but until we have a little bit more. So the traffic engineers and the site designer are going to work together to flush out some of these details as the concept is brought more to its final conceptual stages. But some of those details are going to be, how big could this, there's talk of a curling rink. How big would it be? How many ice sheets would there be? That's going to directly relate to how much parking and how many vehicles. How big would the rink be? How many seats are going to be in it? So there's a lot of things that are yet to be determined that will have to be taken into consideration. And maybe at the end of the day, there has to be restrictions on some of those things based on traffic. It's just too early to tell at this point.
You go right ahead. Yep.
Okay, it's Andrea Richard again, 431 Bunbury.
We gotcha. You're good.
My question is, when the development plan gets further along, is there the opportunity, or would you consider the possibility of doing a 3D model of what the space will look like so it can be evaluated by the community, especially those not used to looking at two-dimensional drawings of three-dimensional things, and what that could mean from a property owner's perspective, and what that could mean for the community's perspective who reside in the general area. I am an engineer by trade, profession, whatever you want to call it. And what I find, especially when I'm managing a project, is when you show people drawings, everybody has a different interpretation of what that will look like in real space. So a 3D model with the opportunities to kind of walk through it virtually, not one by one, but have a video or something, so that the scale, size, and layout can be fully understood, because it's a significant landmass. They're significant structures. And we're not incredibly densely populated, but I think it would be a very nice thing to do for those adjacent and those within the community that are excited about it.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. I think that's an excellent idea. Yeah. Jane.
Jane Farquharson, 156 Bunbury Road. There's lots of exciting things about this proposal, and for the people here who are the developers who are selling the land, it's really, you know, your opportunity to have the zoning so the sale can go through. For those of us who live close to this area are going to be incredibly impacted by not only the community campus, but also the proposed subdivisions that are going in. I think it's really a different story. And the thing that's difficult for those of us who live and are going to be significantly impacted is that we have no information. So this is an opportunity tonight to get the zoning finished so the town will own the land and the development process can get started more expeditiously. But for those of us who are waiting to see what's going to happen, we still have no information. We don't know exactly what is going to be built. We don't know where it's going to be built. So there's a lot of trust involved here. So I went back and looked at the vision for the town. I looked at our sustainability decision-making framework. I looked at the policies that will impact a fair and good development for those of us who are residents and are going to be directly impacted by this. And so I guess tonight there's really only one purpose, and that's to get the zoning approved. The questions that many of us have around models and around mitigating things that will help us embrace this concept that's going to be developed, I think will be held at other meetings. But I think just to say that for those of us, again, who are directly impacted, some of us may have to sell our houses and our businesses. Some of us will be so impacted by this that we will have to make life decisions for our families. And I think that needs to be understood. I'm sure this is no different than any other development that happens. There are some people who are going to be severely impacted and others who are going to benefit more from the development. So this isn't a new concept. But I think particularly, you know, I'm 7th generation on our farm. And so what this means for me and my family is very significant. There's a lot of historical heritage. There's a lot of history. And I've had discussions with Jill and with others, and I think people are sensitive to that. But when the zoning happens, when the rezoning is confirmed by council, then when the wheels start turning, it's harder, I think, to have input. And certainly your concept of a 3D model, I think, would help people understand at further public meetings. But I just want to put it on the record that this is going to have a very positive impact for most of the community, but there are homeowners whose lives are going to be very significantly impacted by this. And I think, and I hope that the Planning Committee will continue to take that into consideration. Certainly, my husband and I voiced our concerns when we had the Zoom meeting with Stefan. Sustainability and the environment, it's not just protecting our property. We are also very concerned about the multiple developments that are happening, how those are going to be integrated to keep Stratford a warm, welcoming community and not just stocked full of people. There's a fine balance. You can overdevelop, and I think we really want to see an integrated approach to not only this particular development, but all the others that are taking place. So I'm sort of saying that on behalf of the other homeowners who are here, because we kind of feel like it's completely out of our hands right now. We have to hope and trust and be part of it. Be part of the process that's ongoing, so that our properties will be respected. But we also are incredibly committed to an environmental assessment and sustainability, looking at LEED buildings, looking at all the very innovative ways that this campus could be a model for the whole province. And so there's some very exciting components about that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
We are holding this campus in all the funding and everything that we've put in for different pieces. We are, and Robert can speak to this, he's done a lot of the applications, but this will be, we are taking a green approach, a low impact approach with this campus development, a net zero build with anything that goes on there. So those are things that we have committed to with the campus. I absolutely appreciate where you're coming from. There is a lot of things in the air as we move through this, and a lot of balls to juggle, I admit. And I can absolutely appreciate those comments and make sure that as those pieces of information come in, that we make consultation a big part of that moving through this process.
Any other questions on this particular application, or should we move to the third? I think we're good. You're going to see a pattern, I think, in the presentation. This is the final component of the 3 proposals. This is the remainder of the parcel that's closest to the Mason Road, and it does include Jane and Doug's property at the town's request, partly just to avoid spot zoning. So again, I'll go through the proposal overview, the requested changes, and we can talk about any questions we have. In this case, as with the previous one, it's just a map amendment. There are no textual amendments required. We're looking at changing, and these properties are already within the town's boundaries, so it's a change in designation as opposed to a new one. So the request is the same for this case. It's a low-density residential and a residential designation. Currently, it does have an agricultural reserve zoning. It's designated for agricultural use. And the concept at this time is 39 residential lots, which includes 8 semi-detached lots. Or sorry, two unit dwellings, whether it's semi-detached. You can see this is the parcel that does connect to the Bunbury Road, and there is the one parcel that's sort of enclosed within it that has been included to avoid spot zoning. It's already got a dwelling on it, so it's not part of any potential development concept. It's it just, again, to avoid being surrounded by a different designation. And I will note that the property to the west, which is sort of the closest to the Mason Road, is already designated R1, even though it's not developed currently. So this is a continuation of the existing zoning pattern. This is the preliminary development concept. Again, it's subject to change at the time of application based on what's permitted under the zone. It is a change from the existing driveway, which would become a road, recognizing that this is the sort of situation where there is an impact on the property owners around it. So as I noted, it was previously designated, or is currently designated, for agricultural use. The property between it and the Mason Road is already zoned for R1. Again, the full subdivision concept would be submitted at the time of application to subdivide. And this is for various reasons. It was mentioned earlier in the evening that there is no process in PEI for conditional changes in zoning. So you can't tie a change in zoning to a specific application except in PERD or CDA type zones. So, properties might change hands over time, and a future property owner would also be permitted to submit a subdivision based on the zone standards as opposed to what was submitted at this time. So again, we're sharing the concept so you can understand what might go in, but it is subject to change. And again, there is an existing house on one property that's part of this application. And the same comment on the transportation piece is that, this is a proposed residential use. It's not expected to surpass what the Bunbury Road could maintain, but it would be looked at in more detail, especially the connection of that proposed road with the Bunbury Road at the time of subdivision. It's the same list I showed with the previous one in terms of the permitted uses within the R1 zone. And the summary of the requested changes. So it's a change, change from agricultural for both properties to residential and R1 low density residential. So I'll open it up to questions on this particular application.
Again, my concern.
Come on up.
Again, my concern, and I too am an engineer, a lot longer in the tooth than the other engineers are that are in here. And I wished I had now had won the project for the development of the phase, because we did bid on it. But I am concerned that you have another road coming onto the Bunbury Road. You have a subdivision down below me on the Duffy Road with a lot of subdivision, and you have a school, all within less than feet of each other. It's not kilometers, right? That's an extremely busy. You're also going to start to move school buses off from coming from other areas into that area. I think it's very short-sighted to look at those three entrances, that there should not be some other way to do like they did down here on the Trans-Canada, the Georgetown Road and the Mason Road. We have a problem. We already had, the province already had to realign the lower end of the Mason Road to get it to come into 90 degrees. It's hard to believe down the road as these things, well, we'll wait till it's subdivided and approval to make a decision on the road. It has to be looked at now. There has to be one, in my opinion, some kind of an intersection with all this traffic coming into it. It's very short-sighted. And
I think, in fairness, to answer that, it will be looked at. There will be no approval given to any concept unless the Department of Transportation are comfortable with the proposed access points, and whatever studies are required. When you talk about capacities for the Bunbury Road and whatnot, they are all part of that. They own and operate the roads within the town. So although there is a consultant that's been hired to do work on behalf of the community campus, all of that work has to be proofed and ultimately approved by the local Department of Transportation. So, we'll certainly pass your comments along, particularly in regards to the alignment of the Duffy Road and whatnot. But any access points onto these collector roads have to be reviewed and approved by the Provincial Department of Transportation.
I would reiterate, too, there's a lot of questions on the Bunbury, and I understand a lot of the action tonight is on the Bunbury side of this campus and this development. A main entrance to this site will be through Hollis, and it's expected that, just based on previous conversations, that with Public Schools Branch and Department of Education, that they almost identify Hollis being probably more of a main exit initially. This site was picked. There was a whole exercise that we went through when we were trying to select sites for the campus, and this one, a big piece going into that, and that was, I don't know, over a year ago now, maybe longer, was access, and traffic was a big consideration from the Department of Education, the Public Schools Branch, the town, and so a big part of why this site was selected was it had multiple access points, Hollis, Bunbury, and there are multiple along Mason, actually, that will come as those areas are developed. They will come. So that was a big part of this site selection, actually. It's just that right now it's new, and so you only have really those two access points starting out. But this campus is it's going to be a phased development over, potentially a long period of time. You can only do what you can afford, right? And it depends on funding, and it depends on a lot of things. But we know the high school is coming. We know that. There are other things going on there, like some recreational. We know we need ball fields. We know we need some
other recreational facilities, multi-use courts. Like, so this is going to be phased over time, and maybe that's what the community needs to see, is what is that phasing and what is that costing? What are you going to be doing in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And maybe that's what I'm hearing tonight is what you need to see. Yeah, I don't know if that helps anything, but.
And just to speak a little bit to the phasing and the process, without the certainty of zoning, it's very hard for someone to put together and to spend the money that it would take to invest in the design to get to the stage where transportation could even say, yes, we'll entertain this. So, you know, the zoning is definitely the first step, understanding that people want to make sure that the next stages are also well thought through.
I think maybe to add to that from the transportation perspective, we kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier, you know, with the preliminary traffic impact statement information that's been done already, you know, the design team will use that information to kind of guide the design and where things are going to physically be located on the site. And you know, a lot of the discussion here right now is around the Bunbury Road site, but as Jill mentioned, you know, Hollis Avenue is also a connection point that will be, and potentially the way that the town is approaching this is they want to develop all the roads within it within one phase. That's the goal, so that the locations of the individual things, such as the high school, which we know the high school is coming, can be located on a portion of the site which is the actual best location for the site, based on traffic, based on stormwater, based on infrastructure, based on all of those things. So we don't want to end up having the school at the Bunbury Road into the property if that's not ultimately where it's best suited for the site. So I think the town taking the approach that they want to develop all of the road infrastructure at one point in time will hopefully give the best traffic flow patterns when it comes. But again, all of those things have to be approved as they go through those design stages. So the traffic has to be approved, the environmental components have to be approved, the infrastructure has to be approved. And then there's a third access point, which hasn't really been talked about much, but because there's a private landowner between the proposed community campus site and the Mason Road. But there is a future access that would be directly across from the projection of Jubilee. Jubilee would go over and connect to Mason Road next to Williams Gate, and then across the Mason Road and basically into the center of the community campus property. And if you look at where that brings you with the core of the town, you know, some indications are that could be one of the main connection points, particularly for the active transportation component and bringing, you know, potential students into core area and into existing businesses and whatnot. So there's a lot of details to be sorted out yet, but I think as Sam mentioned, you know, without the certainty of zoning, you know, you can only go so far before you say, well, if the zoning ultimately doesn't get approved, well, that's kind of where everything stops. If it does get approved, that's really where a lot of the real hard work starts, and a lot of the formal designs start to get more solidified, and then the traffic starts to get more. You know, you can calculate traffic patterns better, and that's where tweaks and stuff have to happen in the design to try and ensure that we have proper traffic flow, and we're not going to create issues at the end of the day.
Robert? And Mr. Larkin, you had a question up here on that map. I'll get to that after Robert.
Thank you, Councillor Burge. I just wanted to speak a little bit to what Jane was talking about, just for those in the room and those watching online. Council has committed to developing this campus according to our sustainability principles. We have asked the designer who's doing the concept plan now to live up to those principles, and that doesn't mean just doing environmental assessments for construction, but it means looking at significant environmental features on the site and preserving them. It means active transportation built into the site. It means sustainable stormwater management. It means net zero. Council's committed to making the whole campus a net zero campus. In our application for servicing, we included a solar field to supply all of the site electricity needs, and then each building would be built to provide its own electricity needs as well. So the whole gamut of sustainability will be looked at and is being looked at by Stefan, who was listening into this call from Upland. And there'll be further consultation with residents. We've had, starting 2.5 years ago, visioning for the campus, and then we had focus groups to determine what are the elements and things that residents would like to see on the campus. And then we had a long-term forecast survey to ask residents to prioritize what they would like to see on the campus and how much they're willing to spend for on it. And so there'll be more opportunity to be involved, but we're trying to build that showcase that you were talking about that really lives up to our sustainability principles.
Thanks, Robert. Mr. Larkin, you had a question on one of the maps up here.
I think it was your question was, and I'll try and point it out on the screen so people can see at home, was this proposed road across from the Duffy Road? Yeah. No, the Duffy Road's actually down here. Yes, yeah, that would be out in front of Jane's existing house. Yeah. And again, conceptual, this is a conceptual drawing, and as Sam had said, there's no guarantee that it would be developed in this particular layout. This is a layout that the developers have worked through with a designer, and we've had some very high-level discussion with transportation about access points onto the Bunbury Road, number of lots, stormwater management, servicing, that type of thing. And at a very high level, this concept works. So we can't guarantee that this is the way it's going to be, but this is potentially a design that could work.
Any other questions from folks on what I've presented? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Samantha. All right, I guess it's time for next steps. So this will go to Planning Board for discussion and recommendation to Council on July 5th. There'll be a Town Council meeting for decision on July 14th. That'll be for first reading. If it passes that, then there'll be a special Town Council meeting for decision the next day, July 15th. And at that time, we would do second reading and adoption of this rezoning. Tonight's proceedings will be found on a video on the town's YouTube account. It's on our Facebook account if you want to go back and revisit details and ensure all the questions that were had here tonight have been answered. If you have any further concerns, questions, you have up until June 30th at noon to submit. And then all those will be taken into the process, into Planning Committee, Council. So that's the next steps. So I'll thank you all for coming out here tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michelle. I didn't acknowledge you at the start. Michelle Beaton's here. So thank you all for coming. It's a long night.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Yep, one more.
During the Zoom call, I just want to make sure that we had the correct interpretation in regards to the site planning process. I think Upland suggested that there would be 3 models developed.
I think 2 concepts will be developed.
Okay,
yeah.
2 concepts. They would go to who? The Planning Committee?
Are you talking about the campus site
the
design?
The campus, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's actually a campus, a community campus implementation committee working right now, which has town staff representatives, council. We have 2 engineers with transportation infrastructure. They're kind of engineers that build the schools are sitting on that committee. a representative from Public Schools branch. But yeah, so we're going through, the consultant has actually come up with a number of just kind of, at this point, it's just kind of bubble adjacencies that he's trying to figure out on the campus. And so he's proposed at this point to that campus, to this internal committee, 6 scenarios. And so through that committee, they're asking right now, give us your favorite 3. And then he's going to try to run with that. And once we kind of get through that rough stuff, then yes, there'll be that'll be brought, Robert, that'll be brought to public consultation, I'm guessing, those concepts. Yeah. We'll have to clarify where those concepts go, Doug.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what our understanding was.
Okay.
And this did create some concern for us when we responded to Uplands, is that those 3 concepts would be brought to a decision-making process of some kind internally, and one would be selected, and that one would then be taken to the community and saying, this is it. This is the plan that we're going forward with. Personally, I would have a lot of trouble with that. I would like to see, if it's 3 or if it's 4, if it's 2, that there be full impact assessment on those 3 models, we'll say, theoretically, environmental assessment, traffic assessment, all of the impacts that are going to happen in the community. It come back to the community, and the community decides which one looks good, or a mix and match of 2, or whatever. I think it would be difficult for a lot of us to walk into a room and say, this is the plan, without a lot of input. That's an extra step or 2 in the democratic process, but I think it's very necessary to ease some of the concerns that will, as you say, bubble up through this process.
Yeah, Stefan is on the line. Maybe he has, it was kind of his framework that we're using as a consultant. Stefan, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Oh.
Bit of an echo.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Been distinguished questions and concerns. We have requests for proposals. The terms of the RFP specify there is the presentation towards the end of the process. So that is currently our contract and the route we are taking, and I certainly understand the concerns with it, and we potentially can discuss with the town if there's amendments to that process, but generally that is where how things would evolve currently.
Stefan, can we get you to repeat that? We just kind of didn't have your sound kind of fixed to the last couple of minutes.
Okay, from the very beginning?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just generally, we've been listening in during the whole meeting. It's been really interesting, really good for us to understand, again, your concerns. We have had small group discussions with a few neighbors so far, and we've certainly heard a lot about the Bunbury Road concerns and the general kind of aspirations for the campus, but also the apprehension about the change that it is bringing. And those are very valid concerns. This is a big development. We do believe we can mitigate a lot of the concerns and work with them. And with regards to the question to process, it is we responded to a request for proposals. And the terms of reference laid out the consultation process, and as our contract currently specifies, there is, as the participant attendee correctly said, we are planning to present a draft concept, one draft concept at the end. And whether there is flexibility there with the town to potentially change that process, that's not up to us to decide, but we would certainly be open to a very transparent and collaborative process.
Thanks, Stefan. And yeah, we'll take that into consideration and we'll talk about that, what we can do there. Thanks, Doug. All right. Thanks, everyone. And exit is out that door. Oh, yeah, we're the last one. You can go out whatever door you want.